Today's meeting of the Environmental Advisory Board is called to order on September 18th. Welcome, everyone. The members of the Environmental Advisory Board serve voluntarily, and we were appointed by the City Council. The board's objective is to provide citizen insight to the City Council and staff on environmental activities within and affecting the City of Clearwater. Agendas of today's meeting are on the wall to the entrance of the chambers. Please remember to turn off your cell phones and electronic devices. To ensure a complete record of the board's actions, we ask each individual speaking to state their name and spell it for the clerk. Will members of the board and staff please introduce yourself? To my left,
Jason Grist. Michael Rubino.
Jared Leone.
Kelly Dobbin.
Cassie Cordova.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from the July 17th Environmental Advisory Board meeting. Was everyone able to take a look at the minutes? Are there any changes to them? I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, none opposed. Motion passes. We'll go on to citizens' items to be heard not on the agenda. Is there anyone to speak to anything not on the agenda? If so, please come to the podium. All right, if not, we'll go on to our
wait, we got one.
We do? Oh, come on up.
We have to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I'm Bill Johnson, 2694 Redford Court West in Clearwater. I've been here and talked to you on several occasions, I think, about landscaping on highways and the CRS project. I would just share with you that on Monday, the City Council had a presentation from a consultant on vulnerability in the city. And I thought it was good that we're evaluating that. The other side of that is that the city's goals for this coming year did not really include much in the way of environmental protection. It's economic and strategic plan, and then internal facing performance items. So nothing there about the tree canopy or CRS or medians or landscaping. I did bring a picture of Ocean Park. It's beginning to look a little worn. So thank you for listening to me.
I appreciate you bringing these concerns to us, Bill. I will say, and this is some stuff we'll discuss later on in the meeting, we did put together a letter supporting an improved number for the CRS, and we were directed to a discussion that was done about median landscaping, and I thought we would probably just briefly discuss that later in the meeting as well. Thanks again. Is there anyone else to speak to any items that are not on the agenda? Please come forward and state your name. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Chris Michalek, M-I-C-H-A-L-E-K. I live on Clearwater Point, which is, for those of you who do not know, on South Beach, towards where the Sandkey Bridge, the bridge goes towards Sandkey. I'm here today to talk to you and ask for your support in writing to the City Council about an egregious situation that has been happening in our neighborhood for the past 5 years. It'll be 3 years this Saturday that the City Community Development Board voted to allow Decade Properties, Inc., their owner, Jeff Kylieber, and their attorney agent, Brian Onks, to build a mammoth hotel in our residential neighborhood. We were told at the Community Development Board meeting that all the issues, it was 5 hours that we were there speaking before them, all the issues we brought forth would be dealt with at permit. That included many environmental issues. The permit was applied for on August 19th, 2022. And from that time, we have sent copious letters to the planning department, we've appeared before the city council, pointing out all the non-compliance issues. We have moved forward at this point because construction has started on the seawall, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Some of you are aware, I know you are aware, that there are certain facts about what's happening to our seawalls. The developer has proposed that his seawall be only 5 feet from the building, and we abut Clearwater Bay, Mandalay Channel. You should be aware that with the new marina, we've been told that the antiquated seawalls must be replaced. The marina, for example, replaced their seawall, and now seawalls must be elevated to respond to the rising sea level. Decades submitted a plan for only 5 feet, and they said they had an engineer look at that plan, and they are proposing a structure that will change the 8-foot setback requirement by Pinellas to only 5 feet. They claim that their engineering plan settles any kind of structural problems that could be happening. We asked in May, when we saw that the seawall would be replaced, we approached the city council and said, we want you to go back to the CDB and demand that they change the seawall to over 5 feet. I'm going to give to you a copy of the seawalls that abut Clearwater Bay and Mandalay Channel that are over 5 feet. No seawall. At the minimum, they are 15 feet. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Chris. Is there anyone else here to speak to any items not on the agenda? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Rudy Michaelek, and if it sounds familiar, my wife was just here in front of you. Additional points with regards to this property that's on Bayway Boulevard is our concern with the limited number of setbacks, 5 feet at the back, I think it's 10 feet at the sides, and about 12 feet on the front, is now a area, about 2/3 of an acre, that is now having very diminished land area for the absorption of water. And so our concern also with the building is the ability of runoff water, and where will it go and where will it be channeled. We have received from the planning department a set of the plans, and I think specifically now referenced us to a certain diagram on there in order to look at how rainwater would be diminished from the area. Obviously, our concern is now that seawalls need to be heightened from where they were above ground, is how that flow is going to move off. Recently, we spoke with Marcus Williamson, having to do with certain distribution of the movement of things, I'll say it that way, and expressed to him our concern also of how this would interact with regards to the property. The fact that there now be a minimum area for water to be permeated within or resolved within. So our concern, again, in terms of the environment, is we keep taking away, this property did used to have trees down one side and so forth. According to the plan, somehow trees will be stuck into this 10 feet eventually, but everything has been stripped off the land at this point. And our concern, again, is with regards to the limited amount of space in terms of setbacks. Are they going to be able to even equal what had been there on the property? And so we wanted to bring that to this committee and share those thoughts and concerns. And just as a side note with regards to the seawall, first we were told they were replacing it. A permit was applied for to replace it. And interestingly enough, after we met with the certain members of the city council after that, suddenly that changed to repair and enhance the seawall, which gives us great concern because we've got a 60-year-old seawall. We're now going to have a building that goes almost 100 feet in height, 5 feet away from it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Rudy. Yeah, I know in the past we had a group come to us about development. Usually we don't do anything about private developments because that's out of our kind of purview as an environmental board. But some of the points that were brought up about permeability and pervious and impervious surfaces, I think are warranted, especially considering out on the beach the stormwater issues that are already happening. I don't know that this is something we can get into today, but possibly at a future meeting. We do have a lot of the minds in the room already that know a lot about permeability, and they're going to speak to that later on about a different issue. But maybe that's something that our board can look at in terms of citywide, how we look at pervious and impervious surfaces and how we go through if you have a 5,000 square foot lot and a small house on it, or a 5,000 square foot lot and a larger house on it, and what those impacts are, and how that is kind of impacting, and all these different pieces kind of put us where we are today with failing infrastructure to take care of it and having less space for groundwater to recharge anyway. So maybe that's something, Cassie, I don't know how we could, that's kind of a large thing to wrap around, but looking at how permeability and pervious and impervious space with how that's kind of treated throughout the city as a future meeting idea. So anyway, thank you very much for your comments. If there's any other item or any other citizen to speak to any item not on the agenda? None? Okay, we'll move on to new business items. 4.1, review a presentation on the City Hall.
Well, hello, I'm Tara Kivett, the city engineer, just to give a nice overview of our City Hall project. And I've got a short presentation. We will touch on some of the LEED-related items, because our goal is still to get a LEED silver building. So we'll touch on that at the end of the slide. Feel free to stop me anytime to ask questions. Okay, so the City Hall is imminent. Actually, we have a grand opening scheduled for October 10th at 10 a.m.
Is it the second?
I'm sorry, 2nd at 10 a.m. Apologize. So you'll start seeing a lot of activity come mid-October. A GMP was already, a guaranteed maximum price for about $7.4 million was already approved by council in February. That included an early release package so that we could lock in some significant pricing on some of the high-ticket items like generators, switch gear, elevators, chilling units, air handling units, that type of thing. So we realized some cost savings because of that. Also, we're doing some owner direct purchase through that, where the city realizes some tax savings. And that GMP that was approved in February also included some site work and foundation work. So that is the work that is going to start in October. And then we also have a guaranteed maximum price we plan to bring to council at the next council meeting, which is September 30th work session. As of now, we are in budget. The construction value is just under $30 million. So we're on target. We're very excited about that. The team has worked diligently on, we have an owner's rep, Brodus, Wanamaker Jensen is our architect. Ajax has been brought on board as the CM at risk. We've all worked diligently on reviewing the plans, getting many interim cost estimates so that we can tweak the design and make some value-added changes to save some money to ensure that we are staying under that $30 million mark. So we're very excited about all this. Like I said, LEED, we'll touch on that a little bit later. And along with this project, as you may be aware, was also making MSB more efficient, making that so that it can now align better with the longevity of the new City Hall. So in order to right-size City Hall, we need to make some of the space in MSB more efficient, also improve some of our customer service forward-facing components. So that's been a parallel project. Obviously, City Hall was a priority, but we also are bringing a guaranteed maximum price to council shortly. We're targeting the September 30th for the initial phase of the MSB. That project's a lot more complicated in the fact that it's a renovation. We also have to relocate everybody, so that adds to it. We're saving about $1 million by giving the contractor the entire building versus vacating per floor and having them work per floor. So that helps. The challenge is we have to relocate everybody. So we are looking, obviously, to still maintain customer service, especially in the land development permitting component. So we're looking at utilizing some existing city space, anything from the main library, but it looks like the bulk of staff will go out to the old Countryside Library, which is out by Fire Station 50, between Fire Station 50 and the water plant. So that's where the bulk of staff will go, along with some possible lease space in downtown. And like I said, the library. We're even using parts of Clearwater Gas to maintain our customer service group, that has the drive-through window right now, so that can kind of have a similar setup at Gas, along with putting some folks out at our District 3 police substation and at Countryside and in our main police station. So we're getting very creative using any open space. So again, that's to save money, be efficient. It helps with our IT perspective, all of that. So, any questions on that? All right. Here's the big picture schedule. We're tweaking that slightly, but basically we expect the new departments that will be moving into City Hall, and that includes City Council, City Management, City Manager's Office, City Clerk, Legal, HR, and Public Communications, which currently are operating out of the MSB, that everyone will be moving in summer of '26. And then the MSB project, we're looking at that to happen between December of this year and July, August of next year. That's more of a 7-month project, where the City Hall is about a 21-month project. All right. Okay, so next steps. Sorry, I've already touched on a bunch of those about getting approval from council. Obviously, since I just talked about the groundbreaking, Ajax will mobilize. Some things that you'll see some activity also is a canopy mock-up. I'll show you what that looks like on another slide. We've got obviously all our professionals on board to help us with construction administration. The same thing with MSB. We will realize, some cost savings by having both of those projects go on at the same time. Obviously, City Hall is a longer project, but that does help us save some general condition costs from our contractor Ajax, along with some of the construction administration costs with Wanamaker Jensen. Oh, and the City Hall project has already won an award. Wanamaker Jensen won an AIA, the architect professional group, for the unbuilt project. So we got a regional award for Florida for that. So more to come. Hopefully we'll get the built project. This is a general a rendering of our site. So the building will be facing the Myrtle Avenue side. So that's to your right. East Avenue is over to your left. And then it's between Pierce on the north and Franklin on the south. So just south of the current Municipal Services Building. And as you may be aware, then just south of that, PSTA has plans to build their multimodal transit center on that lot that we had swapped with them earlier. So there's some facts up there. We are tweaking the parking a little bit compared to what's shown on here on East Avenue, because we have some issues that's a quiet zone. You guys may recall that years ago, I think Paul Bertels spearheaded having the CSX quiet zone go down East Avenue. And so because of that, there's some restrictions that we had kind of forgotten about in that area. But we do have EV charging stations, a couple on the north side. Some of the street parking will be reserved for city council members. We've got rain gardens, as you can see, Florida native landscaping. So all of these factors that are identified to the right there are helping contribute to getting to our goal of 50 points minimum for a LEED Silver. That's a rendering. It's fairly accurate. I just want to give you a heads up. The change is that, again, for some cost savings measures, we brought in that, the canopy portion a little bit. It doesn't quite extend as far out towards Myrtle, and the columns have changed slightly. So that's a nice rendering. Here's the east, facing East Avenue, so the west side. Again, the columns have changed slightly. The signage also might be a little different. We're not envisioning putting the city logo on there, but so some things will change. And that's a lovely rendering at night. This is a rendering of the first floor, that round area. So in the bottom, that will be our, which is open to the public for their use, but also our training room. And then the upper section there in the wood is our council chambers. So we'll be relocating out of here and moving into our new city hall, obviously. So it's an open floor lobby within all the offices on both the north and south sides. This is just an example of what we're envisioning the training room to look like, and that's the layout over there to the right. There'll be, it can be also a multi-use room. It can even handle overflow from council chambers for some of the larger events. That's a rendering of the council chambers.
I hope those won't be the chairs that will be used. Those look very uncomfortable.
And we're going to use these exactly. And just an idea of kind of this color scheme, a little bit of that natural look, some kind of green and blue tones in some of the office areas, break room. I think this is kind of more of what the city clerk legal space will look like. That's the north and south elevations off Pierce and Franklin. And notice we've obviously already started conversations with Amber, our public arts specialist. So there's some concepts of murals inside on the stairwell that you can see through the window. We're also looking at maybe a couple sculptures in the green space, as well as some sculptures hanging inside in the lobby area.
So that's what okay, because when I looked at those renderings, I just thought the public art is just this wall.
We're looking at numerous.
Okay.
I mean, per our code, we're supposed to allocate $200,000 towards public art. So that includes not only what the artist is paid, but also what's needed on the construction side to support that. So in fact, our guaranteed maximum price will include an allowance to help cover maybe some additional site lighting for the potential artwork and a base for sculptures, things like that. So that's to be determined still. And this is the lead scorecard. So as I said, we're at 51 points. I can get in a little more detail here. So this just points out some of the certain categories. So I am not a lead expert, but for the 11 points listed up top first for location and transportation, a lot of it's the walkability, access to public transit, so it helps being right there next to PSTA, bicycle facilities, et cetera. The sustainable sites, that covers areas like the actual construction activity, how that's done, pollution prevention. Yeah.
I have a question, like when you say we got 11 points, 11 out of what?
50 silver gold.
Our total right now that we're envisioning is 51. You need 50 to be lead silver. I do not know the total number of points per category.
Oh. Do you know how many points it takes to get gold?
60. So we have some maybes. So right now we're tracking. 51 is yes, strong maybe as 7, weak maybe as 16, and non-achievable is 38. So I guess total would be if you add all that up. So with a strong maybe, we could be at 58. So it's the weak maybes that might get us to gold, but that's doubtful. Our goal and our commitment was silver. Okay. So we've got 6 for sustainable sites. Then we have 4 for water efficiency. So that's both indoor and outdoor water use reductions. We've documented 56% reduction in outdoor use and 47% reduction in indoor use. We have 13 points for energy and atmosphere. That includes our fundamental enhanced commissioning when we take over the building, energy metering, energy reduction, and some refrigerant management. Indoor environmental quality, 6 points have been confirmed. So we are meeting, we're exceeding minimum air quality performance, environmental tobacco smoke control, and low emitting material standards, and then many other environmental quality standards for indoors. The 3 points for innovation and design. That obviously includes our lead AP involvement, some innovation credits for low mercury lighting and green building education. Some more details to come on that. The regional priority, that's 4 points. That was really just the site development and heat island reduction. And, sorry, I went out of order. Number 7 up there is material and resource. That's 3 points. That's just operational with our in-house waste management and also waste management during the construction activities. So that all contribute to those points.
Well, it seems like the high end of some of those points and the low end, there could be some gaps to maybe make sure that there's, like you said, about like 58 or 60 is to gold.
60's gold.
But 58 is where some of these might be able to raise, so then we'd only be a couple points from gold. I just wonder what it would take where some of these are so low that if it's a matter of,
Well, and
With
we
what-
do, we
yeah.
do have on the table, solar, roof solar. So is that shown right there? So that's a potential 5 points that I believe were not considered in this initial.
There you go.
Because that, we're including that as an add alternate, so more to come on that. That will be
Okay.
presented to council. We're working on fine tuning that pricing now. We wanted to make sure to keep the project in budget.
for sure. This would be the city's first LEED certified building?
Yes, it would.
Yeah, that's why I feel like if it's just a few points, really try to push to get that, because.
Solar would give us five extra points.
Well, I'd have to confirm if it was already included in the that would be the,
And the energy,
yes, it would be in that,
Yeah, because they're showing them in
The
that,
Energy and
in
atmosphere.
that,
the 13
13.
points.
the image
To
shows
my
that.
understanding, it is not. So if we could get an extra 5 points, we'd go from 13 to 18, just on that category.
Yeah, no, the solar, 5 for solar is in the,
It was not.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's
in
an
the
ad
red.
alternate, so we're not even sure it's in budget. So that would bring us up another
That's in a week,
56, and then we would still have, how many did I say we had this
4.
week? Maybe 7. So 56 plus 7, we could possibly make gold.
Okay.
and may I ask why it's, solar is separate, being considered separately from the rest of the budget? Or the rest of the,
It was,
is that a request?
yeah. Budget.
No, so I was just gonna say, when we were trying to get it within budget, the solar being solar ready, we put all the infrastructure in for it. And you're making those budget-based decisions, it was, that is gonna compete extremely well for a grant because the return on investment would be very high. So we were like, let's keep other features that we know will help. Solar is an easy one because it's the very end of the project. Whatever money we have left over, we can then buy out as much solar as we can, and then it's easy to go from that standpoint. So that was the rationale when we were looking at it. It gives us that late decision or very easy to go after grants.
And we wanted to be conservative when working with the lead consultant on making
Yes,
sure
yeah,
we meet the minimum silver.
And just on the grants, so we've got a DOE grant that we've already received. There's just no, it's gotta be Buy American, Made America. And there's no solar manufacturers that meet that threshold yet. So we've got this grant just pending that could theoretically be used. This could be a location. So we've got a couple of different options to go after it. It was just that's a great one to give us the flexibility we needed, so.
Thank you very much, Marcus.
That's the Charlie Crist grant you're talking about, or
Yeah, the FY '23 Congressional Spending Award for 1.9 million that's been
Oh.
officially put on hold from DOE because there is no BABA compliant solar panels. So they've put the federal government has put all of their solar grants on pause until they come up with a waiver. So we've kind of got this 1.9 in our back pocket. Depending on the timing of that waiver, if and when it comes out, it might work well for this city hall.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know
That's
the city
great to
hall was considering grant funding for their solar, so.
Or maybe somebody will open up a plant in America and get some panels made.
Is that the, ABA, A-B-A-B,
BABA,
or BABA? Buy America, Buy America?
Buy America, Build America.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Buy America or Buy American. There's 3 federal things that sound very similar. This one is the new one.
Okay.
So it has to be manufactured in the United States.
Does that mean all components have to be
A
American?
certain percentage of the components. It depends on, there's different categories within it, and depending on the category, a certain percentage has to be the materials themselves. Like steel, 100% has to be from America. But the manufactured, I forget how it varies, but certain percentages of the products have to be made within America, and then it has to be assembled in America. It's very complicated.
Okay.
Okay, that kind of wraps up. This is the award, that's Wanamaker Jensen receiving that award for the unbuilt category I mentioned earlier. So, thank you.
Yeah, I thought that was great that they won an award. I was curious, though, the design, what is that supposed to be, the canopy? What is the design, just overall? A lot of times, and I don't want this to sound wrong, but architects usually are very proud of what their design is and have a story about what it is. Do we know what the story
Yes,
is
I
for the
think
design?
They're trying to evoke like the wave kind of thing.
Like the library?
Yes, exactly, you know,
Like the sound.
yes.
Okay.
And then meeting the downtown design guidelines are very robust for, you know, identifying your entrance and, thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments from the board for Tara or Marcus?
I just have a question. She said she was tweaking the parking. How many, does that mean we're losing spaces? About how many are we going to lose? Do we know?
Yes, I think we're losing 4 or 5. Not too
Someone said
many.
at 25, it'll
Not
be
too
about
many.
20 or
Yeah.
21. And that's right next to where there is a parking garage, right? The others-
Correct, correct. So the current MSB parking garage there between police headquarters and our building will support the occupants of City Hall.
Will the MSB building have, I'm not sure, well, it won't have any design changes. It'll just
No.
be,
It's all interior renovations.
Okay.
Just to be more efficient with our space and make some needed upgrades with HVAC.
okay.
And that was going to be my question about the efficiencies you mentioned for MSB. It seemed like those are all just in terms of the design space. It didn't sound, like I was looking, last night, there was an item about the MSB on the city council
Right.
agenda, and it noted that it's not being designed for lead. There isn't really any efficiencies in terms of,
I mean,
Building
we're
wise.
replacing the air handling units
Okay.
and putting in, so the VAVs, I think were mentioned in the write-up, I believe. So that's a more efficient, both comfort and use. So I would almost bet money that we will see a reduction in our power usage just because of new units. But mostly it is about space efficiencies.
okay. And is there any discussion of solar addition to the roof there?
Not at this time. Yeah, because it's an existing roof. The time to do it would be when the roof is replaced.
And that's not part of?
No, it is not.
Okay. That's what I would think would be another efficiency overall with the building
Right.
in terms of enhancing it from a different sense of efficiency. All right, and does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, with the solar for the city hall, have you started, looking at all? Do you have thoughts about what developer you're gonna, or what installer you're gonna go with, or what pricing you're shoot for?
We'll know a lot more in the next week or two. I can't recall off the top of my head what the subcontractor that provided the pricing, what their name was, but we have some high-level pricing.
Would you be able to follow up with Cassie?
We can
when
let you
that's
know.
in a couple
Yeah.
of weeks, and then just maybe
Be
email the
interested
board?
in pricing per what? Per what?
Okay.
That they're,
Yes,
For
we
what?
we may,
For
we
For
may
what?
have a too high level to give you that, but when we get
Okay.
to that point, we can share it.
what did we pay, just out of curiosity, for per watt for the solar on the, for the park?
I don't.
For the, We have solar in the,
We pay,
Coaching park?
the whole, it cost 250,000. I'd have to look to see how many watts it is.
Yeah.
I don't know off the
Okay.
top of my head, but it was $250,000 total cost.
$250,000, okay. For, what, 130 panels? What was it?
There's the 3 different buildings. I can get it to you.
Okay.
Look it up.
All right.
All right. Any other
Just
comments from the
curious.
board?
I just have a question. Is it possible to get a breakdown of what points you're getting for each category of the building? What qualifies for points? I mean, this is actually the background that I come from.
Right.
And so to understand what points you're getting
So
for
what made up like the 13 points in the one category?
Yeah,
and that's-
Especially.
Yeah, because like there may be very cost-effective approaches to increasing some of the points, like indoor air quality comes to mind. I saw on your diagram, indoor air quality was basically a machine on the roof. Obviously, you're talking about the HVAC system.
Right.
You know, something as simple as filtration, right, can improve the quality of air that everyone's breathing inside, which is great for their health, of course, but also on the flip side, you can increase the amount of points you're getting.
Right.
And that's a lower cost item, so.
So we do have a lead consultant that was hired through Wanamaker Jensen Architects. So I would imagine they've looked at all of that, but I will confirm with you.
Sounds good.
Can I share this with them?
Of course. Yeah, they were named Real Building Consultants, or EAL.
All right. Any other comments from the board?
It's beautiful.
Same.
It's
All right.
just beautiful. I
Thank
think it's
you.
very exciting.
And then don't go too far. We're going to have comments from the audience, and you may have to answer a question or two. Thank you very much, Tara. Are there any comments from the audience? Please step to the podium, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
Bill Johnson again. Having sat through a semi-circus of a council meeting last night with people speaking on every agenda item and being escorted out, I'm wondering, does the second floor council chamber have sufficient security to protect the members of the public that are going to meetings?
We did, we went through it in quite a bit of detail with security. So there is a bunch of different, the layout, the way people can be brought in. They actually can be escorted out a way that's separate from everyone. So we ended up putting a special elevator that's in there. So the second elevator was positioned in such a way that it allows for individuals that are being disruptive to be pulled out of the chambers in a way that is not quite as visible and whatnot, so you don't create that whole issue regarding people trying to get the YouTube videos and all that. So there was a lot of thought of that, security, some additional protection for the council will exist, so. there
No
was-
large cane coming from the side of the.
It's just designed the way that the chambers will be oriented, elevated, kind of secured off. Staff will be separated from the rest of the area also in a little bit more secure area. So there was some effort. Security spent quite a bit of time walking through, talking from the moment they enter to come through the building. Once they're in there, how you control that environment if you have to remove disruptive. So there was a number of security meetings that were held to address that.
And with the, like, in the Dunedin City Hall, it seems like you have to be buzzed into, like, one entrance to get into well, it's similar to what we've got now for getting into the offices in City Hall?
The offices are all isolated off, so somebody coming in can't get to any of the workspaces. So it's all designed so that folks coming in go into a set area. We can kind of close off different zones within the building outside of the chamber and whatnot. So
Will there be a receptionist downstairs in
There
the
is,
public area
yes.
so that they could buzz people in or call up?
Correct. There'll be a security guard that's down there. There'll be obviously cameras out there so that they can see what are going. If you look, there was from the architect a lot of effort to keep glass, so trying to have lines of sight so they can see in different directions, as well as if there's reception desks that are up on the second floor, they're positioned in a way that they can also see out and see areas too. So that they put quite a bit of thought in the security side.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Yeah, lead consultants, security consultants, air quality consultants, a lot goes into building. All right, any other comments from the audience to this item? Please come forward, state your name, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Christina Beatty. I just had just a quick 5-second just comment on the solar part. I have an off-grid property. I'm pretty familiar with how solar works. Your solar panels are not indefinite. We're going to continue to spend money upgrading solar panels after so many years because they only have a lifespan. And once those lifespans starts to go in one, it's like a whole chain. They all start to just produce less and less and less solar power. So it's an ongoing expense. I'm all for the solar. Obviously, we have a property that is that way, but I would like to see us focus on getting those numbers higher in those other areas to get to that goal. It's just a simple suggestion from having a solar property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Yeah, and like we said, I think there's a lot of room in some of those other categories to maybe make some increase. So, great. Thank you very much. Any other comment from the audience? All right. Thank you very much, Tara. Thank you, Marcus. We'll move on to our next item then. It's a review presentation on the artificial turf ordinance. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jamie Lopko. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager with the city. So we're here today to talk about changes to our Community Development Code related to artificial turf and some other topics related to non-living landscape and some other couple of cleanup items. And so just keep in mind, again, we're here to get your input, but it's still an ever-changing ordinance. It's not final at this point. Some of you have seen one of my previous presentations, and you'll probably even notice there's been a couple of changes since then. So let's get started as to why we're drafting these regulations. Artificial turf became popular. It's becoming more popular as an alternative to natural turf, commonly because of less maintenance for people, as well as less water usage. So currently our Community Development Code prohibits the use of artificial turf. So any properties that currently have it did install it illegally, and city staff did begin code compliance, and that's kind of what drew this issue. We got some concerns from people who had code compliance started with them and had discussions with council. City council asked staff to give a presentation about why turf was not permitted within the city, so that was done in December of 2023. So staff presented information about why it wasn't currently permitted and some of the environmental concerns, and then audience members were allowed to participate as well as installers to give information. Some were in favor and some were not against it, but we did hear a lot of benefits of artificial turf presented at that meeting. So City Council did opt at that point to direct staff to begin drafting regulations that would allow artificial turf within the city. So staff has drafted what we feel is still a working document, but we're looking for the best possible regulations that will allow artificial turf, but also give some protections to the environment. So getting into the amendments, we'll have several different sections related to the artificial turf to cover different areas of concern with it. The first one's going to be location. So we're going to look at where are we going to allow it, where are we not going to allow it. So it'll be permitted in your yard, on a rooftop, on a patio. If you have, we have several places where we're not going to permit it. So we have buffer areas, perimeter buffers and vegetated buffers that are required per our code. Some uses aren't compatible, so there's a perimeter buffer. If you're in preservation, or you're going to have what do we call it, a vegetated buffer there, and we won't allow artificial turf within those. Also, we're not going to allow you to use artificial turf for any parking surface. We do allow grass parking in certain places, as well as our parking islands. So the parking islands and our grass parking will not be allowed to be used for artificial turf. The last part of it is going to be our right-of-ways and our drainage features. The code is written that they are not allowed within the right-of-way or a drainage feature unless it's permitted by a city engineer. So they will have to get a permit from a separate approval from the city engineer if they're going to allow artificial turf within the right-of-way or with their drainage feature. So move into the design standards. This is going to be specific to the type of turf that somebody installs on their property. And so that's going to be things like the minimum height of the blades of grass, which is called the pile height. There's also the overall weight of the turf per square yard, which is referred to as a face weight. We're going to regulate the color of the turf. In residential areas, we want it to be a green lifelike blade. But we are going to exempt parks and recreation, athletic field, to use some color on their applications. A couple other things we'd like to see is a minimum of an 8-year warranty, and we will require that all artificial turf be lead and PFAS free. Moving into permitting and inspections, we are proposing to do it through a building permit process that will be reviewed by several of our departments with minimal inspections. So the permits will be issued to either a general contractor, an artificial turf installer, or a homeowner. Note with that though, if you have a general contractor or artificial turf installer come in and do it, if they meet our regulations, it can be treated as a pervious installation. If a homeowner chooses to do it on their own, due to the specific type of installation that it is and the requirements of allowing it to be a pervious installation, we feel that it needs to be done by somebody with the expertise in doing that. So if a homeowner chooses to do the installation, it will count as impervious and go towards their impervious surface ratio for their property. So as part of the building permit, we're going to ask them to submit a landscape plan or a survey. It's going to show us their property. It's going to show us any trees on the property. Going to show us where the artificial turf is proposed for the property, as well as and their current impervious surface ratio. If you have artificial turf that's going to be proposed in the critical root zone of any trees, we are going to ask for a tree preservation plan because we want to make sure that we're not doing detrimental damage to the trees. There's going to be our arborists are going to look at it to see how close and how much we're going to allow to be done under the critical root zone of a tree. We're going to ask for a scaled detail or cross-section that's similar to the one that you see on the screen. Those typically will come with the manufacturer specifications, the installation instructions. This detail, as well as the warranty, should all be something you can get from the manufacturer that you purchased the turf from. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So in your permitting process, you're going to require the homeowner to submit everything that you would require from the installer or the manufacturer, but yet you're going to hold it against them when they go to install it themselves and save themselves money?
The things that we're asking for this is all something that will be provided by the artificial turf person that they purchase it from. This detail, the warranty, the installation instructions, the specifications, that's all a package that they can get from the artificial turf installer. But the actual plan, yes, we need to see where they're going to put the turf. I mean, it doesn't have to be an engineered drawing. It can be any survey, and then you could even hand draw things onto it. We just need to see, okay, are there trees on your property so we can make sure to preserve those and get a plan if needed. And then also make sure we know how much artificial turf and where you're proposing to put it.
Right, but my point is, if you're requiring the same requirements for the homeowner that you would require from the installer and the manufacturer, why would they not be given the same view and not be considered impervious?
There are different standards, and we'll get into that under the installation.
Okay.
That's where I'll point out the difference and why we're requiring two different things. So after the installation is complete, we are going to ask for a final inspection. The contractor has to submit, this is one of the extra things that the contractor or installer has to do for it to be treated as pervious. They have to submit information verifying the subbase that they put in, because we have specific subbase that we're looking for. And they also have signed a verification form stating that the installation meets the standards that we have in our code to be treated as pervious. So they are signing off on that what I installed meets these regulations, and the subbase that I used, here's the form that says it meets your regulations. That's something a homeowner would not have to do.
Right, but if a homeowner did do that, could they get the same allowance?
No. And I'll get into the specifics under installation. That's just one of the things as part of the inspection part of it that I wanted to point out. That's one difference there, but there are installation standards that are different for a homeowner versus an installer. Yes.
It was my understanding that in installation, that a layer of soil is removed and compacted, and then so this is uncompacted subgrade.
Yes.
So,
They have to remove probably anywhere from 4 or 5 inches of soil to be able to have a level surface. But once they remove it, the soil that is left there, they cannot compact it for it to be treated as pervious. If they compact that soil, it's impervious.
right. Okay.
All right, so back to the final inspection. So we're asking for someone to submit photos to us. So typically, when you're installing something like this, we look at artificial turf installation similar to a driveway. You're going to do the same amount of disturbance to put in a driveway as you would for artificial turf. And typically, once you're putting the subbase down, we would want to come out and inspect that to make sure you put in the right subbase, that it's put in the right way, that you've done the right depth, used the right materials. But because this is such a short process, we didn't want to hold up the installers and the project any more than necessary. So we're asking for people during the process to take pictures. When you put in the subbase, take some pictures for us so we know what you've done. When you put in the leveling layer, take some pictures and so we know what's been done. And so that's an important part of the final inspection, and it'll be an important part of the education so installers are aware, because if it's not done when they come in their final inspection, we will have to send staff out and we will have to pull up areas of the turf to be able to be visibly demonstrated what was put in. So we tried to make it easier by allowing the pictures, but if it's not done, we will have to come out and do a little more disturbance there. And then lastly, we'll want to get pictures of the final product and where the tree barricades were required to make sure no damage was done to trees and the barricades stayed in place. And then the last thing is some people want to put a small little area of turf out there, whether it's a putting green or area for the kids or for the dog. If it's 50 square feet or less, we are not going to require a permit for that. The homeowner can do it, but it is going to count towards your impervious surface ratio. So it's just something that we're going to allow the homeowner to do without a permit, but because there's no inspections, no permitting, it's going to count towards the impervious surface ratio. It's extremely small, and then only one of those will be permitted for each property.
50 square feet.
Yes. All right, next is installation. So as we talked about, the property owner has a choice to hire a contractor or an installer, or they can choose to do it themselves. So these are the regulations that I'm going to go over that we expect the installer or the contractor to be held to if they're going to be treated as pervious. They can hire an artificial turf installer, and if they don't comply with these, it will be counted as impervious. So this is important that these are the standards that we're expecting to be done. And the first is that the backing of the turf has to be dual flow or a hole punch to allow for drainage. The second is they have to have a leveling layer of decomposed granite or limestone that's going to be on top of your subbase. And that's basically going to give a flat surface for the turf to be rolled out on, so it's not on a rocky subbase that may not be flat. We're going to have a subbase layer that has to be clean stone that meets the FDOT stone specifications. And it has to be 3/4 to 1 inch in size stone. There has to be an unwoven filter fabric on the bottom and along the sides of your subbase that will hold the subbase in place so it's not going to move around and cause the turf to then move and be lumpy and no longer be a flat surface. And then the last thing is the underlying soils have to remain uncompacted. Now those are the things that we are holding the artificial turf installers to, as well as a general contractor. And because this is a very specialized thing, that it's important to make sure that it's draining. We don't want to have to cause more stormwater issues. We don't want things running off into the right of way or onto neighboring properties. And because we're not requiring engineered plans, we feel like the only way to ensure to treat this as pervious is to have a professional do it. And that's why we're considering impervious if a homeowner were to do it, because we feel like they cannot meet these standards without having an engineered drawing out there and having somebody else help them through the process, because it's not an easy process to get through and put a quality installation in. Now, if somebody wants to go out and roll turf out and put it on top and glue it to their patio, that's a different story. But if you're gonna go out there and you're gonna excavate 5 inches of your yard and have to put these different layers in there and a specific installation to make sure that it's gonna drain and not impact your neighbors on the city stormwater system, we need a professional out there doing the installation for it to be treated as pervious. Now, some people may have impervious surface ratio left on their property that they can go ahead and put the turf in there themselves and not have to go down that road. We can do that, but that is the price that the homeowner's gonna have to pay if they're gonna do it themselves, where we can't verify a quality installation that is gonna count toward their impervious surface ratio.
And what is that? The ratio?
Each zoning district has an impervious surface ratio, which limits the amount of hard surfaces, your structures, your buildings, your asphalt, your concrete, things that don't allow water to penetrate. That's considered impervious. And so each zoning district has a different percentage of the property that can be covered by those surfaces, and it ranges anywhere usually in residential from 60 to 80? Yeah. It gets higher in commercial areas, almost up to 90, 95% in like US 19 area, but in residential, we usually allow 60 to 80% of the property, depending on the zoning district you're in, to be covered by impervious. And that'll be your driveway, a shed, a patio, your house, all of those things will count towards your impervious.
And when you say pay the cost, that's because our stormwater rates or individual stormwater rates are tied to the pervious and impervious space on their property, or?
No.
Okay. So what would the difference be for a homeowner if they had impervious space and they wanted to put this on their property? They could, and then still impact stormwater, because it would be considered impervious,
Yeah,
right?
if they did not go over their impervious surface ratio with their house and their driveway and what they have there, they can still put a patch on there, but I can't guarantee it's gonna be their entire yard or what they wanna do. It's gonna be whatever percentage of the yard is left.
And they would pay the same amount of stormwater. Their stormwater rate would be the same as someone who had a complete
Jared, I
natural
think when
rest.
she said pay the price, she means like, say they've already
Sure.
had 50%
Yeah,
and they are
yeah.
only allowed 60% and they add
Yeah, I
8%,
guess my
then
greater
that's
point,
gonna
yeah.
limit any future development they wanna do. So if they put this artificial turf in and then next year they wanna put a shed in, if they're out of ISR, they can't.
Yeah.
So I think that's what she meant by pay, not pay an actual physical
Yes,
price.
not a cost.
Okay, but even still, the cost that homeowners pay for stormwater is the same regardless of how much permeable surface you have on
Currently.
your-
Currently, yes.
Okay, okay. All right.
Kara wants to jump on that one.
Yeah, Tara Kivett, city engineer. Right now, currently, it's by single dwelling unit, pays one equivalent residential unit. You'll see ERU in our code. So that's a flat rate per dwelling unit.
Okay.
So right now.
So the same lot size, small, big,
Correct.
it pays the same price?
But we are looking in the near future at doing, taking a deeper dive, evaluating the different sizes of lots, and looking at a more tiered approach. St. Pete did it a couple years ago, so we're looking at doing an evaluation on that then could change the system.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I guess just talking about permeability brings that up, so, thank you.
So for residential, the ratio, you can't say off the top of your head what the ratio is?
It's gonna depend on your zoning district.
Do we have different zoning districts within the city? Or is it all the
Within
same?
residential, there's different
Yeah,
zoning?
we have low-density residential,
Oh,
low,
okay,
medium
like
density
the
residential,
development.
medium
Okay,
density,
okay.
medium high.
Oh,
So,
I thought it meant with like a different type of zoning.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, me
each
too.
zoning district will have its own impervious surface ratio. Or land use? Zoning. Land use. All right.
So
I
if- so-
misspoke, it's land use.
So there
Land
is,
use
there's
will dictate
no
that.
ratio, there's no limit or percentage on a property if the installation is done according, and permitted appropriately and engineered correctly, then one's entire lawn and property could be covered by artificial turf.
No.
Okay.
That's one of the things in one of the later slides. We
Okay.
have created a new regulation that requires 25% of the front yard to be landscaped areas with living plant material. And it also we'll have the tree preservation plan as well too, and the arborist will look at based on the type of tree it is, and they will gauge how much and how close they'll allow it to get to the trunk of the tree. So there are limitations on what they can do.
If I could, hi, Gina Clayton, Planning and Development. In the LMDR zoning district, in the low medium density zoning district, the ISR is 0.65. That's probably the largest zoning district. The amount, most properties are zoned LMDR in the residential areas. So just wanted to.
Thank you very much.
So I have a question. Are there going to be any limitations on how many permits will be given or how many homeowner permits will be given? I'm just curious because what's to prevent a homeowner from, going and getting the permit themselves and having their installer do it but cut corners because they don't want to follow all of the guidelines?
If the homeowner pulls the permit, it will be counted as impervious.
But they're not following the same standards, right?
They are not required to.
So is it gonna be that an installer cannot apply for impervious permit?
Oh, they can, if they feel like they cannot meet these standards, and there's an impervious ratio left on the property, they have that ability, but I don't think anybody wants to do that on their property. If they can have it be pervious and be draining, I think that's the best case scenario.
We could maybe just also let her finish. She's got some more
Yes.
slides. So that way we're not
Some more
asking
slides, and
questions
I
that
just
are-
assume your questions.
Yeah.
So the next thing with the installation is manufacturer specifications may require or recommend that they have infill. And that's what you see on the screen is some of the types of infill that can be used with artificial turf. So we are requiring that it be a clean silica sand or a sand-based product. We're not going to allow plastic or rubber pellets with the exception of our parks and rec facilities and athletic fields. They do use that in some cases for safety concerns with athletics and possibility of children falling just as a safeguard. And they may eventually move away from that with the advent of shock pads and other safety devices that can get away from the use of that. We want to make sure our seams are nailed and glued, not sewn, our edges are trimmed, that the finished installation is smooth with the grain pointing in all in one direction. And then we have our drainage statement. It has to be designed to not impact adjacent lots, the right-of-way, or other properties, and it has to follow the historic flow of drainage in the area. And then lastly, if you have a seawall, we want to make sure that it's pinned behind the seawall, that it's not attached to the seawall, and it's not over the cap of the seawall. All right, last thing's on maintenance. So we want to make sure that if you're going to install it, that it's properly maintained. Because that's going to ensure you have a quality product that's sustained as long as possible. It's going to keep your fibers upright. It's going to protect against damage. So that includes brushing or sweeping the turf to remove debris and keep the blades upright and the infill in place. But it can also be rinsing off pollen or other materials that could leave stains or odors. So if it falls into disrepair or becomes faded, it will need to be replaced with the same or similar product. And so now we'll get into other regulations. There's what we call non-living landscape materials, and that's going to be shell, rock, and stone. And so we're creating regulations for those. Some of those materials can be problematic when they're washed off your property and get into our stormwater system. So we're proposing to allow a limited use of shell for walkways in your side or rear yards on residential properties. We're proposing to permit the use of landscape rock and stone as a minor element that's integrated into the landscape of your property. And so we're going to further clarify that to make sure people understand that it's limited and that non-living landscape materials should also not be installed in the city's right-of-way or under the drip line of a tree, as those can be detrimental to both. So I put some photos up there just to give you an idea. So the photo on the left is what we're kind of looking for. Even though they have mulch in that yard, those landscape beds, and that's kind of what we mean is a minor element. They could use landscape stone or rock in lieu of that mulch along there and comply with what we're asking for. The photo on the right is what we're not looking for, is where we have the entire yard that's made of a shell or a rock or a stone. And so we're looking to not allow that. All right, a couple other things. We talked about the creation of the requirement for the front yard. We're going to clarify again with organic mulch. We don't want to see that as your entire yard as well, so we want to make sure that's integrated into your landscape and that we want it used underneath your trees. And lastly, we have clarified that we don't want turf to be used for grass parking surfaces. So anytime we have grass parking or your parking islands, we just don't want artificial turf used for any parking surface. And just to let you know, there's still a couple of things that we are still discussing, so I wanted to put that out there that these are not in final. And that includes discussion about how we're gonna handle properties that already have turf in place or already have non-living landscape materials that don't comply with what we're going to put in place. And so we're considering allowing these to become nonconformities and remain for a certain period of time. We have discussed the possibility of it being 10 years. However, that's not the final number. We don't know what it's going to be at this point. We're still doing research on what other communities have done and what we've discussed with legal to make sure that what we're doing is going to be what's beneficial to the city as to whether we allow it to stay and how long we allow it to stay. Other things is our definitions. There's going to be new and updated definitions, but until we've got everything pinned down in the ordinance, we're not certain what those will be. Some of the design and installation standards, again, we're still discussing those to make sure we've got the best thing out there and that it's clear to both our staff as well as property owners and installers when they need to get a permit and what they need to do to get that permit. And same with the permitting process. We're going through that, making sure that we're making it as simple as possible, making sure that any staff that needs to be involved has the opportunity to be involved, and putting that process in place ahead of time to make sure that we're all on the same page and everyone's giving out the same information and the same messages so we don't get frustration from the installers for getting mixed information. So that's important for to get that out there. And the last thing is we are still discussing the potential fee for the artificial turf permits. We're going to figure out if it's going to be a standard fee across the board or if it'll be based on the size of the installation. We're not sure yet, so we're still going to look at that. So that concludes the amendments. Did want to let you know the dates moving forward of where we're headed with this. So Community Development Board will be our next step. That'll be our first public hearing on October the 15th. And then I'll move on to City Council for first reading on November 7th and then second reading and adoption on November 21st. And so all those are public meetings. Everyone is welcome to attend and give their input. But I did want to let you know we've had several public meetings as well as this one. All of those comments will be summarized, and including the EAB's comments, and they will be included within my staff report as it moves forward through the process.
Thank you very much, Jamie. We'll open this up to comments from the board. Anyone from the board, please?
I have a question about I mean, you said no rubber is allowed, and then you mentioned plastics, but, what is this stuff made out of? I mean, the blades and particularly the surface and I mean, you showed pictures, I'm just not real clear. Is a polypropylene, how can there not be plastics involved in
That's
this?
the infill. And so if you look at the picture, you can see the little, the brown parts that are below that.
Yes.
You can see just inside of that, there's something that's called infill. It's not the actual blades.
Right.
There are certain turfs, because of the way they're installed and the quality of them, that don't require infill. But most of them will require infill. Because it keeps your blades standing up and it keeps them durable and extends the life of the turf. And so that is basically, once the turf is laid out and installed, they will go over it with a spreader, similar like you would with something on your lawn, and they will spread sand on it. And that sand will be the infill that is on top of it that helps the turf stay in place, cools it to a degree, and then also keeps the blades upright. And so that's where also the brushing comes into play, that it helps keep the blades upright, but it also freshens up the infill when they do that. And so those are certain types of infill. You can have coconut, cork, sand, plastic pellets, rubber, crumb rubber. There's any type of, all types of infill that can be used with turf. But we've asked for it to be a silica sand or a sand-based product, with the exception of our parks and rec facilities and our athletic fields. And they will be allowed to use crumb rubber only.
But there are plastics, the blades are plastic, or they're a petroleum product.
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the first slides said only PFA-free product.
Yes.
how is that possible?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to.
There is a level that has been determined in most states that considers it to be PFAS free, and I'm sure Chris can tell you all about that.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the board?
A couple, yes. What type of consumer protections are we putting in place for homeowners? So for instance, you have they hire a contractor to put the turf down, and it doesn't meet our standards, and they say, all right, we gotta rip it up and redo it. Is that gonna be, how are we protecting the homeowner from the contractor just running off and saying, I got your money already, I'm done? Are we putting any sort of protections in there to potentially say, we're gonna put a hold on all permits filed by this contractor, or anything like that?
I'm not sure if we have a process in place for something like that. We do not. The intent is we tried to make it as easy as possible for someone to get a permit, because right now, there's a lot of places that don't regulate turf, and the installers, we're trying to make it as easy as possible and not hold them up in the process. I've talked to a lot of the organizations and some of the installations that try to regulate this, and there's a lot of frustration with the installers who feel like they can go out and do it by right now. And we're holding them up by requiring a permit. So we tried to make it as easy as a process as possible. But in doing so, that puts the onus on the installer, and that's where we're gonna have a verification form that he has to sign off on, that he's claiming that per his education and his business that he did what was required in our code. And then when they come in for their final inspection, they're going to submit those things to us, and we'll be able to generally see if they've complied with it. And again, with any ordinance, there's going to be a period of, okay, did we do the right thing? Do we need to change something? Do we need to make something harder? Do we need to make something easier? There's always going to be an evaluation period of a code when we put it out there to see if it's working. And with artificial turf, it's even harder because there's a lot of people who don't have artificial turf regulations out there. We're one of the very few who are going down this path. Most of them either say, we don't permit it at all, or we permit it, there's no regulations, or they put a policy in place that causes some confusion of whether they can or can't do it in what circumstances. So we've gone the extra mile to put an actual regulation in place. So we're one of the first who have done this, and so it's going to be definitely a learning experience for us when we put it in place to gauge how successful it is.
What about the end of life for the artificial turf, which I don't know what the average is. I mean, I've read everything from 10 to 8 to 10 years to...
Depends on the turf that they buy. I mean, it'll come with anywhere from an 8-year to a 20-year warranty, and if you take care of it, it could probably last 25 years if it's a quality product.
And then we'll have codes. We'll have codes for turf that at end of life when it gets holy and.
Yeah, the homeowner's just going to roll it up and put it at the curb and.
Well, there's that
Cash takes it
question
out.
too. What about disposal? Because there's no recycling of that product.
It is recyclable. Unfortunately, there aren't any companies in the state of Florida at this time that are recycling it. But it is a recyclable product.
So it will go in Pinellas County into the landfill.
At this time, yes. But for, everybody's going to have a different warranty. We're not going to monitor and say, okay, you have 8 years, you have 10 years, let's go out at 8 and 10 years and make sure it looks good. Our code compliance is still going to go, they're going to do their drive arounds, and if they see there's an issue, that's when we're going to reach out to you. It's going to be on the homeowner for, if you feel like at 10 years, it looks bad and you'd want to replace it, great, come in and get your permit. But if we find that it's faded, it's torn, it's got lumps in it, we're going to reach out via code compliance and say, okay, you're not complying with what we have in our codes when it comes to artificial turf. Let's work towards getting that compliance.
When it comes to the data, I like the idea of doing the photos for making permitting easier. Are we setting photo standards? So I don't want a contractor going to Wheelbarrow, taking a photo of their base material and be like, yeah, this is what I did.
It won't be in the actual ordinance, but we're going to have a very thorough website that has the information, frequently asked questions, an application, flyers, there will be so much education material for this just because it's something that's new and complex, and we want to make sure everybody understands it. So we will put expectations out there for what type of pictures we're looking for.
And what are we going to do to get the word out to the general public that a permit is required?
We will do any number of things. We will come to HOA meetings. We'll do public workshops like we have been. We will if we know people who have artificial turf or non-living landscape materials that are non-compliant at this point, we'll put a door hanger on their doorknob to say, hey, this is going on, reach out to City Hall and talk to us about what's going on with your property. So we will do everything we can to do a full marketing campaign to make sure people are aware and to reach out to the city if they have questions.
So let me just clarify that. I mean, so if you've got, like, there are people in my neighborhood I know who have artificial turf in their backyard. You know, it's around their pool, or it may be less than 50 square feet, but maybe not. So if it's more than 50 square feet, then they would be required to get permitting if it were in their backyard?
If it's new turf after this ordinance is adopted, regardless of where it is in your yard, you have
Okay.
to get a turf. If it's, you have to get a permit, sorry. If it's something that's already out there, you don't have to come get a permit from
Okay,
us.
that's
not the
what I wanted
intent.
to know.
Our hope is that we will say, okay, it's adopted November 21st, 2024. We're gonna put it out there. If you have turf right now, bring to this city an invoice that shows that you bought your turf and it was installed prior to the adoption of this ordinance, and you're good for whatever number of years we put on there. And that would be all that they would have to do at that point until the amortization period ends. If it's 5 years, after 5 years, we will then reach out to all the people who have turned in their documentation and say, okay, we're working towards compliance at this point, what do we need to do? And it doesn't mean they're gonna have to rip up their entire yard. It just means if it's in the right-of-way right now, you may have to get a right-of-way permit after the fact. Or if it's up against the trunk of a tree, we might ask you to pull it back. We'll work with them to bring it into compliance at that point, not just require a wholesale removal of it.
Okay.
Would it be considered impervious, the homeowners that currently have it? Let's say they had it professionally installed, but at this point now, if the ordinance goes through, it would be considered impervious?
Yes.
And now, how would we know if that meets or exceeds what their pervious or impervious ratio would be at their house? And if it exceeds that, what would then be the action?
They will become non-conforming for their impervious surface ratio. And once the period of time ends, say it's 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is, when they bring it into compliance, the impervious surface ratio will be one of the things that we look at. So if you're required to be at 65% and you're now at 75% because of your artificial turf, because we considered it impervious, we're gonna have to find a way to bring you into compliance with that 10%.
But that
And
could take 5 to 8 years, is what you're saying? They could have it like that for 5 to 8 years before they had to make that change, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna require, that's what we're proposing at this point. Oh, sorry.
Hi, sorry, Lauren Matzke, Planning and Development. I just want to help Jamie out just a little bit. To be clear, we're still having conversations with legal because there are a lot of implications to how to handle those. It's still the city's, we still say that this was all done illegally.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of challenges into whether we can amortize it, what is involved in that, how can we bring people into compliance if we choose to go that way. It's very resource intensive. So there's a lot of conversations going on. Just even with, as everything Jamie explained, we've talked about, how to do a public communications campaign with our group. That's a lot of time and staff labor beyond the adoption of the ordinance. So I just don't, we're not set in any way on how we're gonna handle it. We've discussed amortization. We've talked about that in the community meetings to date, but it's really, we've had further conversations since those community meetings with legal. We're going to continue to have those conversations until the minute we have to lock down the ordinance and advertise it.
Yeah.
Sorry to let me jump
No,
on.
thank you very much, Lauren. Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems with a lot of the staffing challenges of the city that this would be not just an enforcement nightmare, but just a number of nightmares. So,
An environmental nightmare.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you've heard our, in the CNC meeting, you've heard our issues with artificial turf, so.
yeah, I was surprised to hear that there's PFA free and that it is a recyclable material, because a lot of the research I did showed that it's full of chemicals and is not recyclable. So that's new information for me today.
A
I
lot
don't
of
know
the
if anyone
chemicals that
else
I
had
found
heard that
actually come
before.
from crumb rubber, and that's one of the most commonly used infill that they have, especially on athletic fields, and so that's where a lot of the leaching of chemicals.
But,
comes
our
from.
concerns are microplastics. Tampa Bay's suffering from microplastic in our waterways.
Yeah, the breakdown over time of the
Right.
product and, a number of those concerns. how, I asked this at one of the, it was last week at the presentation. I was curious how allowing this would meet the Green Print 2.0 goals. And I'm still curious how that is. I guess the PFA free and if it's recyclable changes some of that, but can you answer to that point?
Since the meeting, I did do an evaluation of Green Print, not by all means a thorough, extremely thorough one, but I did go through it, and
There's a lot there.
in my reading of it, a lot of what it's meant to do, I mean, it's meant to be for the city, for businesses and residences, but a great deal of the goals are specifically related to city actions, whether it be for our buildings, our properties, our vehicles, our projects, so it's not specific to a residential property owner. There are strategies and implementation that are for education, for green energy, for livability, transportation, and water conservation. So the only one that really stood out to me that may not support the use of artificial turf is the promotion of Florida-friendly landscaping. And so we've done as much as we can to try and address the principles of Florida-friendly landscaping in the ordinance.
And that was my next question about what does this mean? I think, there's the 9 principles and mulching responsibly, efficient water use, or watering efficiently. And so I know one of the pictures showed use of water on this product. So that's where I think there's it's still a little bit out because it doesn't necessarily not use water altogether.
Right.
It still does use water. And it's not just water use that's coming from a hose. We should think about water use when it rains down and then where it goes as well. And I think some of those concerns are brought up here in terms of what happens with stormwater and how that impacts neighbors as well. I appreciate your presentation, Jamie. Are there any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a
from the
question
board?
about how it would affect our CRS rating, our community rating system. We're at a 5.
Right.
And, we're hoping to eventually achieve what the county did for a 2. And I just wonder how this would affect, how artificial turf ordinance would affect that.
I'm not sure that it would, but I will reach out to Sarah.
Because,
and see.
I do believe there's no matter how impervious this product is, it can't be as impervious as a grass lawn. So, there will be runoff as a result of it. It will cause more stormwater runoff. And if we have it down near, in our barrier islands, in our, in areas near water. Well, actually, my neighborhood has 2 lakes in it where everything, and the stormwater runoff from Debbie that I had and that we had in the sewage spillage was in 3 of the streets in my neighborhood. So and we're at 35 feet. So, yeah, we've got concerns about stormwater. I think that it's coming with climate change. We're just having more and more. So the question is how would that affect as we're trying to get, this rating down?
We'll reach out to Sarah and see if it will have any impact on it.
I believe in previous slides you had, what some of the standards we're setting.
Which one?
You're looking, you said you're looking for a permeability of 10 inches per hour. I think I saw that on there.
Yeah.
To allow it.
Yeah, I saw something like that.
Which I believe would offset what you're concerned about with CRS and having impervious surface. You're right, 10 inches per hour is a lot. Like Debbie, we had a grand total of almost 12 inches over 3 days.
Right.
So it was a lot of rain, but that's a really high permeability ratio or rating. So I think the concern there would be a little, not as concerning as for, as long as it's built correctly.
Yeah.
Or installed correctly.
Well, that's a weed barrier.
I thought I'd keep going back one more slide.
That's the weed barrier's permeable.
Remember that?
That's
Oh,
the
okay.
woven fabric, and it'll be the same
Yeah.
for,
Okay.
that's the one thing that actually will hold it up. That's what we're asking for, an unwoven filter fabric. And we'll have to update this because the weed barrier was taken out in lieu of the filter fabric around the bottom of it. So I will have to update that. Thank you for pointing that out. But the 10 hours, an inch or greater is still going to stand as an expectation.
So say it again, what it is, 10, how much per hour?
10 inches per hour.
10 inches
They will-
per hour.
To
It'll
allow
drain.
rainfall as high as 10 inches per hour.
how does that compare with a normal,
I mean, I've had,
lawn?
at my house, just over off Keene and Sunset Point, the highest rainstorm I've had this, not including Debbie, but I had about 3 inches in about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the most I've had so far. But those are getting more and more frequent.
Exactly.
I saw Tampa has a permitting process. It was like a 9-page permit. It addressed the space of how it can come up to a tree, very specifically there on diameter base height. Is that what we're considering as well? You mentioned an arborist going out to look at it, but they just kind of made basic qualifications. It said if it's this large, it's this space from the tree. If it's this large, it's this amount of space from a tree. Is
Something similar, but not based on that. We will do it based on the species of the tree, and based on that, it's a certain number of feet away based on the caliper inches. So it's similar.
Okay. Yeah, and to your point you said earlier, I had found a permitting process for Tampa, and St. Pete just sort of had a policy that allows it, but are fighting with a number of homeowners who have put it in as well. I'm curious, and one of the photos you showed that you said that was the right way to do it. It looked like the lawn went all the way up to the curb, so wouldn't that go into the right of way?
Yes.
If there was going to be utility work or anything done in the future, who would be responsible for then reinstalling that?
As part of the right-of-way permit, it is made clear that if we need to get into the right-of-way, you are responsible for specialty items. If it's just sod or dirt or something like that, we can work with the homeowner on, but for specialty items that require something, an installation like this, the homeowner will be required to take it all out and they have to put it back in. Whether they hire the installer to do it or whether they do it themselves, they will be required to take care of the right-of-way.
Okay, I know that there were a number of concerns from homeowners, and I guess this kind of borders the environmental, but it's the right-of-way where contractors went in and just tore up their right-of-way without giving them a heads up. This was in some of the Country Club Edition neighborhood. They weren't given a heads up to move things or do anything like that, and some of these third-party utility people came in, and so how do we ensure homeowners that spent a bunch of money on this and could maybe call their installer to come out and professionally remove that? How can we ensure that these other utility people don't come in, tear it up, and then make it so that now it's a much larger expense for the
If it's a
homeowner?
planned project, we will absolutely do our best to give the homeowner as much time as possible. But if it's an emergency that we've got a main break or something, we've
Sure.
got to get in. And
Sure.
it's just, it is what it is at that point.
Sure. Yeah, these were.
Like WOW and.
Yeah,
all
these were like
the
communications.
Communications,
So it certainly could have been
varying
ahead of the
lines.
time, I would imagine.
Up and down the streets.
Yeah.
No notice whatsoever.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, with this, I was not made aware until tonight that this was a recyclable product.
Yeah, same.
Is it, I don't know, if anyone's looked into it, if it is cost prohibitive? I know you said the facilities are out of the state of Florida right now. Is it something that we could put in the ordinance to be like, it is on the homeowner's responsibility to recycle the product properly in a way? Or would it just be so cost prohibitive that it just would not be?
Because there aren't any options for them at this point, unless it were to reuse it on a playground somewhere it's not gonna, doesn't have to be that as flat. I mean, there's not a lot of reuses for it without it being recycled.
Okay.
So it's hard to put that onus on somebody when there's not really a company available to help them.
Okay, I get that. My other question would be, I know you said this is growing and evolving as we're trying to figure
Yes.
things out. In 10 years or so, when someone wants to replace it, if they went through the whole permitting process, have we thought about are they gonna have to rip up all the substrate, subbase again? Or are we gonna be able to allow them to do some sort of permeability test to show that what I have installed 10 years ago is still permeable as a cost saving measure? Or are we not thinking about that now because we're expecting things to change and materials and.
That's something we're still discussing, how we're going to handle that. And it may be dependent on, they may want to pull everything out based on what is there, knowing that it may not have been put in per our standards. And it may have shifted, it may not be where it should be now to be a quality installation if they were to go to the expense to put turf out there again. They may want to redo that subbase.
Thank you. I'm just a little curious in your work on this, Jamie, because this came before the city council and the board in 2011 or so, and city staff worked on it. Some people in this room actually were working on that, I believe, back in that time. What has evolved from what was worked on then to what we're being presented now? Can you speak to some of the changes that you've seen in terms of what the code is trying to address now versus what the code tried to address then? It seemed like it's very similar in terms of the lifelike blades and some of the permeability, but what has kind of changed, I think, to what's been addressed 10 years ago, 12 years ago now, 10 years now in the future? What maybe some things could maybe be changing? What's changed from then to now?
I used the ordinance from 2011 as a starting point. As you'll see, some of the things are exactly the same or very similar to what was there. But because it was 10 years ago, we wanted to basically say, okay, we started with this, but let's pretend we're starting from scratch. Let's talk to our Parks and Rec to say, okay, what is the city using this for? Where is the city using it? How do we install it? What do the arborists think in Parks and Rec about putting turf near trees? Talk to our Public Works. Do we want it in our right-of-way? Do we want it in our drainage areas? Do we want to require a full set of engineered drawings? How do we want to work with the permitting process? We put in our land resources because they're going to have to look at the tree preservation plan. What can we do for the requirements of that? What do they need to see? What kind of inspections? So we've been very thorough this time around to try and make sure we covered as many bases as we can. And back then, there wasn't anybody who had regulations in place, probably didn't have policies in place for us to look at. So we were kind of just doing the bare minimum that we thought we could do to regulate turf. But now there's so much more information out there that's grown that has allowed me to do a lot of research and look at other people's policies, talk to them and learn from mistakes that they've made, to try to basically put a really thorough ordinance out there that may be able to use as a model for other people.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess to that end, like I mentioned, Tampa has a permitting process. Were they helpful in letting you know what some of the growing pains or some of the
Yes,
challenges that they're
absolutely.
experiencing with? And what are some of those challenges that they've had with the permitting process? Can you share?
Theirs has been a lot of what I've told you, that there's frustration that they'll call one employee and get this answer, they'll call somebody else, get a different answer.
Oh, from a user to?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's not a common message coming from staff. They have, I think, 3 different definitions of what impervious is, and people aren't clear, which one am I supposed to meet? And then there's also the permitting process altogether of, it's more cumbersome than ours.
Yeah.
It takes longer. And so there's been a lot of pushback from the installers there. And they've also found that there are installers who are still not getting permits. And so there you're combating, okay, if I get a price for $10,000 from a guy not getting a permit and $15,000 from a guy getting a permit, that's what they're fighting is, okay, how do we make sure we get the message out to the homeowners that you need to be getting a permit for this, or you could be subject to code compliance. It may save you a couple bucks because he's not getting a permit, but then it might come back to bite you in the end if we end up with code compliance.
Okay. Yeah, when I looked at their permit, it was like 9 pages, and it seemed like they tried to be very thorough, but maybe overly thorough in the process that can make it challenging or confusing for someone
Yeah, and
trying
he
to fill
actually said
that
they
out.
specifically didn't write an ordinance because no other ordinances existed out there for them to look at, so they just went the route of creating a policy.
How about the use of staff and staff hours? Like, I'm just curious about like the arborist, like if there are trees on that property, an arborist has to come up and out and determine, how close the artificial turf can come to it. Do we have staff for that? Whose expense would that be? How many arborists do we have? Do we have one?
We now have 3 arborists in our land resources that will do that, and they do that for any time. If you're doing a driveway, anytime we're doing any type of disturbance to the ground, our arborists are going out there to make sure tree barriers are going up around trees. If there's trees on the property, they want to make sure they're being protected, so they are going out there on many site visits for any project.
So that would be the city's expense to do
Yes.
that, not the
Yes.
homeowner.
I guess that's covered in the permitting fee, whatever that may be.
Yes, hence why we're still looking at the cost.
So you don't have an estimate on what the cost of the permitting?
No, I think the ordinance we put out there had $100 on it, and we were, just because we had 75 when it came back in 2011, and I wasn't sure what to put in there, so at this point, it's still under discussion as to what we're going to charge for the permit. Because there is a cost to the staff time of having to do the inspections and possible compliance.
Yeah, and as far as final inspections, is that just going to be the submittal of the photos, or is that going to be a site visit as well?
The land resources will probably go back out to make sure there's no damage to the tree, especially after they've taken the barriers down. Based on there, as long as they have pictures prior to the cover-up, we should be able to do it without having to do the actual inspection.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, we'll open up comments from the audience. Please step to the podium and state your name for the public record and spell your name for the clerk. You'll have 3 minutes. And thank you again very
Thank
much,
you,
Jamie
Jamie.
and Lauren. We may have further questions. Thank you. Please come forward. Yeah.
These up here so you guys can pass them around.
Thank you.
I'm gonna try to talk in 3 minutes and then be available to answer questions. That's the main thing. I want to be a resource to you guys. So real quickly, my name's Chris Powell and I own Forever Lawn of Tampa Bay. I started our company 16 years ago. So I've been in the industry about 17 years. And in that time, it's changed dramatically. In addition to Forever Lawn of Tampa Bay, I have Forever Lawn Jacksonville. I sold Forever Lawn Miami. I had Forever Lawn Naples. I've covered the state and a lot of turf. So locally, we did the Sound Amphitheater for you guys. We've done St. Pete High School. We've done all the work out at the St. Pete Pier. We're probably 80% commercial. Sports fields, playgrounds. We do all the school playgrounds. We have a contract with Pinellas County Schools for all of that. We do a lot of dog parks, a lot of commercial high rises and balconies, you name it. So about 80% commercial, 20% residential. I was a part of the City of Tampa's process to develop the permitting that they did. That's been about a 2-year effort. I went in it, I'll say a little naive. I felt like it was going to be good to be a part of that process. We thought we were in a position, we're one of the largest companies, and we're in a position to support the permitting process and its requirements. 8-9 months into that, I've told them straight up what's happening is you're eliminating the good actors like us. It's made it cost prohibitive, and you can't get any consistency with the inspectors. It's almost eliminated the residential space in Tampa. And what's happened is you have the bad actors coming in on weekends and doing installations and bypassing the permitting process. So there's a cost to putting it too restrictive, and I'm still trying to be a partner in developing that, but it's been very, very difficult, very difficult. So that's kind of the background. I can answer any questions on permeability. We just did a field for Hillsborough County Schools that was over rain collection tanks. It has 8 inches of stone base, our turf, 8 inches of stone base and rain collection tanks underneath. If it weren't permeable, the system wouldn't work. The engineers would not design it like that. We did the little area out at the end of the St. Pete Pier where you have the big building at the end. The problem they were having was sheet flow off of the concrete was eroding the hill. So people wanted to sit on chairs and everything, and it was just dirt. So there's about 15 feet of turf with an 8-inch stone base, so all the water that comes off that concrete drops down through the turf and through the stone base, and you eliminate the erosion. So now you have a place to sit up there, and there's a little curb at the end. So the permeability question has everything to do with the base you use. The turf, as you can see, there's one turf there that's our canine grass, doesn't require any infill, perks in excess of 3,000 inches per hour. It's a sieve. The water goes through it entirely. If I put crushed concrete under that, it's not gonna perk. If I put washed limestone or granite underneath, it drains. So it's literally a drain field. One thing the City of Tampa is doing is because we do 4 inches of stone base, they're including that as retention on the property that offsets other impermeable space. So there's a calculation to do that, but you literally are creating a drain field. So the goal in doing a residential property is you're trying to not change the water flow, so you're trying to not change elevations. But if I do an 8-inch base, I'm making that yard a drain field. If I do a 3-inch base, I'm more mimicking what the natural flow is gonna be. When we do a system that is a permeable system, the limiting factor is the dirt. It's the dirt, and you asked, does it perk better or worse than sod? We had, in the city of Tampa, they hired an engineer to come out and compare about 10 different locations that we had done. Their contention was that it was permeable day one, but 10 years in, was it still permeable? Did it lock up? They tested it. In every case, it exceeded the natural grass permeability. So that's why they approved it as a permeable solution, was after doing that independent testing.
So it didn't compact the soil over time?
We do not, and we do not compact the soil. You do the removal of the grass or the weeds or the whatever's up there to about 4 inches. Then we install the stone base. You do have to compact that stone base though, because otherwise you're gonna get a movable yard that you're not gonna like. So all of those are factors. A couple of things that caused me a little concern: the requirement of a fabric underneath, a weed fabric. In a canine grass installation, that's going to absorb urine. It absolutely is. We would not recommend doing a fabric in a canine grass installation. We would have the grass, we would have the stone base, and then you'd have the dirt below it. The limestone actually helps counteract the ammonia smell and urine. It's a good solution for dog areas, which is a lot of the residential jobs. If you think about dogs, they tear up the backyard, they bring up the dirt on the pool lanai, they bring it in the house, kids do the same thing. This eliminates that, so it extends the usable space in the yard. That's why people do it. The schools are finding that it provides outdoor classrooms, where before the teachers didn't want to take the kids into the courtyards because they get dirt and mulch and then it messes up the school, Now they're going out and they're sitting and reading on the grass and they're staying clean. They're not bringing all that in. So it's a quality of life concern as much as an environmental concern, and there's trade-offs. I agree. I'm not one of these that's saying replace all the grass in the world. There's specific reasons why this is a good surface to address specific needs.
What about the heat effect from the artificial turf?
Sure. It's a little bit of a misunderstood principle. It's a surface heat. So if you have sun hitting it, the temperature on the blade is going to be hot.
Mm-hmm.
The blades themselves do not have the density to be able to retain that heat. When you take away that light source, let's say it's a cloud or a tree or something that's mitigating the light source, it cools within 8 seconds. So it's not like a plastic swing or a paver or concrete or asphalt. If I take a frying pan and heat it up, it retains the heat because of the density of the material. The plastic swings and slides on a playground. They retain the heat. Those blades don't have enough density to retain the heat. So it's a surface heat. It will feel hot to the touch, but if I put my foot over it or my hand, within 8 seconds, that area is not hot anymore. So it's not emitting heat like a heat island effect like our concrete and asphalt and others do. But you can do a heat gun on it and you can test the heat of the blades and it's going to be hot. I tell folks in the middle of the day from 9 to 3 in the middle of summer, yeah, it's gonna feel hot. But it's not as hot as the rubber poured in place you see on playgrounds. That's the plastic, that can retain heat. So it's not as hot as the equipment on a playground. So it meets all those safety ratings.
But the
I don't know if that answers that.
the permeability and the heat, you're speaking specifically about the products you brought in. There could be other products that are less permeable and retain heat at a different rate.
There are. So the color has the biggest impact on heat. Darker green versus, we could do a white turf, which we've done in playgrounds. It doesn't get hot at all, but you can't look at it because it's so bright. It's like snow. Most products, so the one that has the thinner backing will perk at 37 inches per hour. So the product is usually going to be 37 inches or higher. The base is going to restrict that slightly more. The overall solution, when we do a sports field, for example, has to meet a 12 inch per hour spec. So the turf, the base, Uncompacted soil, the whole system is about 12 inches. The turf itself is 37 inches or more.
But, yeah, the completed product is gonna be 12.
Yep.
Okay.
To answer your PFAS question,
Yeah.
PFAS is coming up in a big way. All the US manufacturers issued statements that there are no added PFAS in their products. So US-based manufactured products, you're gonna have a statement from the manufacturer that complies with that.
You said no added,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
the ones that are naturally there would still be there?
So you have to understand PFAS in
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah.
There's thousands and thousands and thousands of PFAS. They're in every single item. They're in your computer monitor. They're in everything. There's about 6 to 7 harmful ones. That's the 6 or 7 that you do not want. It's not the universe of PFAS. So it's a little bit of a challenge, and this gets a little bit theoretical, but if you think of 50-plus years of turf, when it started at the Astrodome and beyond, everybody was saying plastic's the greatest thing ever. It holds up, it's durable, it doesn't decay, it meets all these things. Now the push is environmental, and even we have family members in a zoo, that own a zoo, and they're trying these other cups and everything, and every single one of them is disintegrating. They're dissolving in your hand. So plastic was hailed as this great thing. Now, now we want it to break down. Now we want it to do it. So we can make turf out of other things. It's not gonna last as long. You have to get the consumers to say, okay, I'm okay replacing it every 4 years or 5 years. So it's mixed there. There is no lead. Lead is something, a statement can be made on that too. This American-made, American-built, American testing is strong. It's not to say there's not good products coming internationally, but they aren't regulated the same way as American-based ones. So I don't know I think you can meet that, and I started to say this, Jamie has worked really hard, and she's doing a lot. She needs more of my time, and I am apologetic. I was traveling a lot as she was pulling that together, and we need to be a better resource for her, but she's done a fantastic job trying to balance all of the conflicting needs in it.
We appreciate you coming out and speaking and taking questions.
Sure.
Any other questions from the
Just
board?
the name of your company again?
Forever Lawn, so Forever Lawn, like a lawn that lasts forever.
Who certifies the product? Is it,
Certifies it.
yeah, like there's, like UL or whatever, is there any kind of certification for the products that?
Well, there's two things. The manufacturer certifies it, but your industry organization is called the Synthetic Turf Council, STC. STC is international. It's not tied to individual companies. It's a membership organization. The national conference is in Scottsdale at the end of October. I'm speaking at that. It is the community of synthetic turf. So it's not just manufacturers, it's architects, it's field builders, it's parks directors, it's the community that's trying to better understand it. That's the organization I would point to, because they have standards around installation methods. They have landscape certified installers. They're kind of the governing body. The president of the STC lives in Florida. I'll say this and it'll bias me again, but my wife is on the executive board of the STC, so she kind of takes that role. She's not in our company, but it keeps us involved on the international scene too.
Does that group lend its name to different products, or say that these ones are certified by the council and that and there's other products that aren't, that are also available?
It's more of a STC membership.
Okay.
On the products, they're not going to get into certifying products. They will certify installers.
Okay.
So you can require an STC certified installer.
Okay,
if
so that could
you
be
want.
a requirement of an ordinance to make sure that whoever installs the product
You
is
could do that.
verified
And I
or
think,
certified.
Jamie, you've already reached out to Melanie.
Yes.
Melanie's the president of STC and is here locally and would be a good resource.
Yeah, that may address issues that were brought up about installation and ensuring that it's installed. The picture isn't just, like you said.
I think the biggest
Okay.
thing when I hear sheet flow, if we want to make it sheet flow, we can. It has to do with the base you put underneath it. If you're going to glue it to concrete, it's not going to perk. It doesn't matter what the product does. If you do recycled concrete over time, that will compact. There's times when we want it to sheet flow. We did up in Pasco County. We we did these like wedding cake tiered displays at the beginning of the entryway of the community, and they're massive. And they don't care that water goes down, it wants to come down. So it didn't matter that we used crushed concrete, but it has to do with the base that you put under it more than anything.
Thank you.
Sure.
And you had mentioned the compacting the rock. Jamie, is that addressed in the layers? You had mentioned uncompacted.
That's the soil owner.
It's soil.
Right, so if
So
the,
it can be compacted.
okay, thank you.
You want me to grab those?
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Chris.
Yes, you're welcome.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Please come forward. No? Oh, okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we've had a lengthy, great, I think it was, thank you very much for the presentation. It sounds like we've learned a little bit new information as well. I'm going to open up to, I guess, a further discussion by the board. We had talked in the past about what position we would take on this. And I know I had mentioned that the city's talking about regulating it and going through this process of regulation. Another way of regulating it would just to not allow it at all. That was done in the past. They just kind of boxed out and said there were some non-conforming uses. We'll allow those that one non-conforming use, and then guess just kick the can down the road to 2024 to figure out more of an ordinance. But there's always another option in terms of that, and I think that's what we had kind of discussed in the past was that as an environmental board, historically, actually, this board had supported it in the past because of the water. For the reasons of water, and especially at the time, drought was an even bigger concern, and water use was a very big concern as well. But as an environmental board, we've also learned a lot from not just us as a board, but us as a community, other landscaping practices and other ways to also reduce water through Florida-friendly landscaping practices that address issues of water, erosion, stormwater, a number of other aspects. So I just wanted to open up the discussion for the rest of the board, what our thoughts are as a board to give to the council and what kind of position we want to take. I had drafted a very preliminary draft based on our earlier conversations, but wanting to take into account the presentation. I had drafted this after seeing two of the presentations, so it wasn't just too premature, but some things I think we learned today are, there's some new knowledge. So again, like I said, I just want to open up to the board for a wider discussion. We could start.
Sorry, Chris?
Yes.
I had a really quick question. What is the,
Sorry. Yeah.
sorry, what would you say like the cost?
You may have to come to the.
Oh, sorry.
The cost for a residential installation made it,
So it's per square foot.
Mm-hmm.
That's one challenge. We don't have installations that are 50 square feet.
Yeah.
That's going to be a homeowner doing that because by the time you get a crew to go out, cost per square foot, I would say the lowest cost you're going to see is around $7 a square foot. That would be a couple guys in a truck, honestly.
Okay.
The most you're going to see would be upwards of about 16 a square foot. So 7 to 16, and within that range, it's product quality, it's what kind of base material you're using, it's what type of excavation, it's ease of access. Those complexities would determine that.
Okay, thank you.
Does that include the material?
Yes.
Okay.
7 to 16 would be a decent range that I think you'd find most residential jobs in.
And so,
Sorry, the reason I bring that up is I think about my own lot, how much it would cost for me to do even a medium end installation. For me, it would be cost prohibitive in my range. And from the reason I bring that up is I am concerned about biodiversity across all the lawns, but it's not like every lawn is going to go artificial turf. It's going to be a select few. It's not going to be a major impact. It'll be the people that are able to afford it and can, as long as they do it properly.
It's interesting, because we've been doing this a long time, and I'm a numbers guy. The average residential installation across 16 years is about 600 square feet. That's the average, and it's remarkably consistent even within each year. Now, that's not to say we don't have a 10,000 square foot installation, but the average across hundreds of jobs within each year has been about 600 square feet. So that's just a measure that might be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Did you have another question?
Yeah, well, you being in the industry, what concerns do you have with your product or your industry?
Yeah, it's, this. Permitting and regulations, it's changing the projects that we can do. The city of Tampa residential one has been a challenge for our business. It's good that we have a commercial space. So I'm involved in environmental things. I see it's a difficult discussion because you save water. You absolutely save water. A homeowner's use of water is about 70% outside the home. You don't need to water the grass. And so it saves water. You're not putting fertilizer and pesticides down, which for Longboat Key, Red Tide, and here, it has an impact. You're eliminating that. And so there's reasons why they've embraced it. You don't have emissions from the lawn equipment. That is the most inefficient emissions. You get more emissions in the US from lawn equipment than you do cars. It's dramatically different. They are inefficient. And so, yes,
No
if you
way.
look that up, it's remarkable. And so you have all of those positives, and I agree on the negatives. The end of life discussion I didn't talk about a lot. There are recyclers. It's an emerging industry. So as this has become a more mature industry, now you see these others coming up. There are recyclers. They're not in the state of Florida, but they're mainly focused on sports fields. So it's when they tear up an entire sports field, they shave all the blades off, it goes into one recycler, the backing goes into another. The challenge with that I'll comment is most of the products made in the US are 70% recycled by weight. The backing on the product I showed you, we have a partnership with Yellowstone, and it's all the plastic bottles that's coming out of Yellowstone. It's getting recycled into that backing. So there's a white paper on it. The plastic blades, you may look at it as a bad thing, but when the Exxon Valdez accident happened, petroleum was sucked up, gathered, and used in the fibers to create the plastic blades. So you have these different 70% recycled. It's already been through its first generation of recycling. Now we're trying to recycle it again a second time, and you have to keep finding derivatives of it. But a perfect example is the plastic boards that we use around the perimeter is recycled from turf. So it's recycled into those plastic boards, and then that's what we're using as the perimeter that we staple to. So it's there. It's an emerging technology, and it'll get better and better as the need arises.
Okay, thank you. Any other, did you? Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, back to our conversation and points. Yeah, you were just you wanted to know about price.
I was just curious about price, and it's like I said, doesn't seem like it's going to be a product that's going to be, we're not going to artificially turf Clearwater. It's not going to happen like that. So that's just my, do I want to say no completely? I personally do not think so, because I feel like it's not going to be an all-encompassing all at once.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and he does bring up a really good point that by saying, you can still buy this product at Home Depot.
Yeah.
And I can go out buy a roll myself and do my yard. Now,
People are.
exactly.
Yeah.
So would it be better to open it up and allow it to be properly, installed and maintained? I believe it should. But
Okay.
I'm open to other discussions. And
Yeah.
All right, Chris, I have a question. So,
Chris, you might as well just stay up here until we're done.
you've obviously seen bad products enter the marketplace that probably have some environmental concerns.
Right.
How could we best advise against those concerns? Can you share some of those concerns so that we can, help make sure that those concerns are being considered in the regulations?
I think you're on target with the PFAS statement from the manufacturer and the lead-free statement, STC certified installers. That gets there. The challenge is you can't necessarily regulate it has to be made in America, right? But you can put the standards in place that determine the product has to meet these standards, and all the American ones do. And so there may be some outside that don't. When you talk about microplastics, that's one of the main concerns with some of the products coming overseas. They break down quicker. The American-made ones, that would be covered under warranty. Some of the products I showed there have a 15-year warranty. Many have 8-year warranties. But you should not get a breakdown of the blades that causes microplastics to go out with a properly manufactured product. So I think you have to do it by the standards. You can't really say, hey, you got to do an American-made product, but the American-made products will meet those standards.
So in essence, we could, if by setting the standard.
Yes.
You would weed out, pun intended.
Yeah.
The product that is made elsewhere. I mean, we see that like in toys, right?
Right.
Toys from China are painted with paint that has lead. Toys made in America are not allowed to use paint that has lead, right? And yet these come across the border, the seas, whatever you want to say, and we have an unfair playing field. We don't want Clearwater to not be business friendly, but we do want it to be environmentally friendly. So I think, we're going to put this on Jamie's back and say, it would be really great if we could set the standards. And in some way, I don't know if STC has like an info page for consumers to sort of educate them more so that they look to buy a better product, because that might be something too that maybe we could collaborate with them and help inform the consumer so that they don't get caught out buying an inferior product, when obviously they might be looking at like, let me put this in because it's going to save water, which is going to help the environment, and they end up with something that's detrimental. You know what I mean? So I would love to see some cooperation there so we could better educate our residents. And we don't want to make it, the environment, not business friendly.
Right.
So we have to figure out how to walk the tightrope. We protect the environment, we protect business, we protect our tax dollars, there's a lot of things to consider.
There are, and I want to give you the floor, that
That's good.
we've done projects with Florida Botanical Gardens. We did Sunken Gardens. They did their wedding venues because you don't want brides and everybody in mud, and when it rains, and it is a good solution for that. So I think you even have environmentally friendly groups saying there's places and reasons for it that are our clients.
But this one patch in the center of a huge park, a large park, I've seen it, yeah.
I just want to let you know that I have talked to the Synthetic Turf Council, and they have guidelines right now for more athletic fields, and they're in the process of putting together guidelines for what they call landscape turf, which is more the residential application. And they have put me in the loop on that, so they're going to keep me apprised of it. And they're hoping right around the November timeframe when it's going forward that they'll have those guidelines to be able to share with me to make sure that when we go forward with our education, we'll be able to use the best guidelines that we have from them as part of that.
Who are they? And then they're
The Synthetic Turf Council?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
STC.
That is TC.
Right.
And they're, I don't want to say they're resource constrained, but everyone has a
Everybody is.
limitation. Yeah, and they're a membership organization, and they're dependent on the funds that manufacturers, and so I know their resources, and they're trying. They're trying to keep
Yeah, and I mean, maybe we can suggest or recommend that they look at hiring an STC certified installer, but I don't know that I would want to say they have to be that, right? Because we want to, there again, we don't want to create a monopoly for somebody. We don't want to make it, make the market so that we don't have competition. All of these things have to be considered, but making a consumer aware and getting them to know. I used to run an auto body shop. I owned an auto body shop. And my technicians were welding certified, and they were all trained through this organization called ICAR. And we did a huge marketing campaign about that. Like, when you go to choose a shop, make sure you choose a shop that is ICAR certified, right? We could do something along those lines of, hey, or go to this organization, look on their website, or here's some other resources for you where you can digitally educate yourself on what's available out there. Because if it's something you want to do, we want to make sure you get the best product for what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, maybe there's a process in the permitting process to allow, again, they're trying to develop pricing, a tiered pricing, that if you go with these installers, you're gonna be looking at this price. If you do it yourself or another installer, you're gonna be looking at this other price, something along those lines even.
I was
don't know,
even
but
thinking
just-
that maybe the impervious and the pervious permits should have two different prices,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because we want to reward what we want,
Mhm. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
We don't want to put anybody out of business, but we want to kind of reward what we want.
Yeah, and I think to Jason's point about, this opens it up citywide. And so if there was 100% buy-in from every resident, that's what, we do have to think about with opening this up, is that not everyone's going to do it, but it would allow it for everyone to do it. And I think some of the challenges that were mentioned in Tampa, that's, by opening up this and this permitting process and regulating it, it's made it more difficult in the residential sphere. And you do have a number of, what Chris has said, bad actors that have come in to that place now, and it's allowed there. They have a permitting process, and it's being kind of bypassed.
You
So
see it in solar too.
It's in,
There's bad
yeah.
actors in solar.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
It's created
They don't get around
challenges
permitting
that I understand, but are difficult to explain to homeowners when we have one where the lady did her entire front yard 10 years ago, and it's up around the tree. The tree's healthy, and Jamie's waiting on me. I have an arborist that's looking at a lot of the trees where the turf goes right up to it, and the tree's doing fine. She has, so her yard completely turfed all up around the tree. The lady next door wants to do her yard. Now, this lady has regulated, it can't be 25 feet within that tree. So she can't do her yard where the yard is next door is completely turfed all around the tree, but she can't do it because the neighbor's tree is within 25 feet of her yard. You can see the kind of discussions. She looks at that like, how does this make sense? So it becomes difficult.
Yeah, certainly, and the consistency for people who have already put it in and did it without any regulation. So like you said, it's going right up to trees, and if the tree's okay, that's great, but the regulation going forward is gonna say it can't be near that tree. So from an aesthetic standpoint and from a consistency, it's going to be different too from house to house. A lot of challenges, yeah. But to your point, and there can be, I guess, the right uses, and there are some places where there's high traffic, and this is the product that cuts down on, whatever the other concerns are, whether it's mud on wedding dresses or whatever else.
High priority.
But I think, from an environmental standpoint, we have to look holistically and totally at it. And there are environmental benefits to this, so to speak. Certainly not having a number of lawn equipment out there is one of them. There are, options to some of the gas-powered lawn equipment now, as there's options to regular turf grass. But, overall, there's even other options to just having a regular natural turf lawn, using different ground cover that doesn't require any cutting. There's a number of options that meet Florida-friendly standards. So,
Drought-resistant native plants.
and drought-resistant
I've,
native plants. So I guess I'm kind of trying to balance again. This does have some environmental benefits, and there are some people that, that's enough. But as a board, do we feel that is something that this is something that we should support environmentally, or should we encourage and support alternatives to this as a product, while I guess still trying to do the best in the regulation process, saying no additional PFAs or whatever other input we can to ensure it meets those smaller environmental benefits, but maximize, like you said, try to maximize what those benefits are, and, again, trying to balance being environmentally friendly and business friendly is challenging too with this.
Well, it sounds like it's already here. It sounds like.
It is here, yeah.
The horse is out of the barn.
It is, yeah.
So let's just talk about what kind of rope we're gonna lasso it with,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Because
Yeah.
I think that's where we need to focus.
Yeah.
Right now, especially since he,
Yeah.
has brought, we obviously need to do some more research.
Yeah,
At least I know
yeah.
I do, because I wasn't aware of some of the things that you said.
Yeah.
But I do have still concerns.
Yeah,
In light of this new information, though, which has been very helpful, particularly concerning water infiltration into the soil. It was very helpful to hear about this. I still have concerns about microplastics leaking into, because plastic does breaks down photo from sun. Right. So microplastics leaking into water sources. There's heat involved in this that grass does not have, or plant life. The biodiversity is not here. We do have the soil, turf, grass ecosystems that not exist. Microorganisms, the beneficial insects that support wildlife are not there with artificial turf. And the final one is the recyclable. Yeah, it's recyclable, but not in Florida. So from a practical standpoint, it is not recyclable. I know that there, certainly probably not, who knows how much artificial turf we will see as a result of opening this up. I don't know. My major concern is that the folks who can't afford it live around water. And, whether that's an issue or not, but, we have we have beach wildlife and stuff. I think our yards are what's left of wildlife, wildlife habitat now in Pinellas.
I know,
So-
I know in my neighborhood, there are flocks of ibis that,
Mine
eat
too.
in the yards, and they're not going to, and one of my neighbors has artificial turf, and, yeah, they don't go into that yard, but the other part of her yard, she does have a beehive. So, there is like that, I guess, an offset, like you said, that challenge of biodiversity. And that's where I say, like, well, in Tampa, where they are allowing it, there is a permitting process, and it's still rife with problems. So that's where it's like, the horse is out there, and the horses are gonna keep getting out, but allowing it still isn't lassoing them, at least in that example, in Tampa, to a certain extent, right? Because you still
It's
have.
fair, a lot of it's in the execution.
Yeah, and so I think that's what we need to figure out too, is that if this is something that we want to regulate and allow, is it manageable for staff and enforceable, and something that is going to be, executable? Or are we just doing it to, do it, and then we're gonna still have the same challenges of people doing it incorrectly, like they have been now, and illegally. So, just because now we're putting a regulation in place and allowing it, doesn't necessarily stop the non-conforming uses. It just puts into place some strategies to go after the people that do that now. So I guess that would be a benefit to it, but then you're also opening it up to further kind of proliferation of the use throughout the city. So,
Well, you have a neighbor who has it,
yeah.
right? And there are other people who have neighbors who have it.
In my
A
backyard, I
sunken
have
garden
people-
has it, even though it's not allowed.
Well, I think in commercial uses, it is allowed.
Yeah, that-
Like
Okay.
schools and commercial
So just in
use,
Clearwater, just residentially?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I just, if
That's a
there's,
good thing to clarify, yeah. I don't know that for sure.
Right now, it's only permitted for parks and athletic fields.
Yeah, the city had to change its own code to allow it
Yes.
to use it. So when they were building Coachman Park, the city couldn't put down artificial turf, but wanted to, so they had to change the code to allow it so that they could do it. Same thing with Crest Lake Park too, right?
Schools,
Athletic fields.
yeah, but
Yeah.
a lot of it's playgrounds and courtyards and everything else. too.
Parks and athletic fields. Parks and Art
Yeah.
athletic
I
fields.
mean, I would say because it's here.
Yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah.
horse is out of the barn.
Yeah.
I would like to set some sort of
Standards,
guideline.
yeah.
Yeah, and some standards. And have resources for the consumer so that they can make better choices, educated decisions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because even some of the research I tried to do on it, I even talked to my son who, is from California and has landscaping business, and they do a lot of landscape design, and he was like, oh, Mom, you have no idea what's available out there. But even with my research, I couldn't find that much. So, I mean, and we're looking for it.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if we can make it readily accessible for the consumer, maybe have it on our websites, maybe do some sort of campaign or something about it, I think we would be doing a good service for our community.
You said California, so if you look at from a
Don't hold that
residential-
against me.
What?
Don't hold that against me.
I won't, I like California. But Arizona, New Mexico, California, there's literally municipalities and cities that give rebates back to homeowners for installing turf because of the water savings.
California,
So
big
their
time.
priority is water. They don't have it. We have a lot of water, so it's a little bit different discussion. But that's where you get such different feelings about it as you go across the country. They encourage it and they want it because of the water savings.
Well, to that point, some communities are looking to ban it in California. I know Los Angeles was looking to
Yeah, I
ban it
know.
altogether.
Those
and some
rebates
others
have
in-
been rescinded by a lot of
Yeah.
municipalities.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
maybe 5-10 years ago,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
that's not the
California's
case.
neurotic, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
The infills are a big discussion, but Jamie already talked about that. But the rubber infills, even on fields, we're coming up with containment systems. The rubber, the reason you see it used on fields is it helps with the G-max, the impact attenuation. So concussions and everything else, if you use sand, that's harder than rubber. And so you meet better safety ratings with the rubber. They just don't want it getting outside the field. And so you see things coming up for that that are part of field installations too.
Yeah, there are a lot of fields in California that have, like soccer fields, that have what we call the turf with the rubber pellets.
Yep.
Yeah, but the kids love it because it's much less impact on them.
And
They
it's
can
uniform.
noticeably tell, they say.
It's uniform. It is safer in that sense. You don't have potholes and things that are gonna sprain. But again, of that arena, our products, you saw that thicker backing. That thicker backing requires less infill because you're giving stability to the blades by the thickness of the backing. We use a much lower amount of infill in even the sports fields than traditionally has been used, regardless of what infill you use, whether it's rubber or other. By comparison, we use about 1.6 pounds per square foot on a field. Other products or older products use 5 to 7 pounds. It's a different problem when you have 5 to 7 pounds per square foot than just 1.6. So. anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're kind
Thank
of
you.
a little bit all over the here with how to try to direct our comments
Right.
here. How can we drill this down? It sounds like we have members that want to allow the regulation. It's there. We want to figure out the best way to allow it, I guess. Not necessarily to encourage its use, but to educate residents on its use. And we also want to put into place further, I guess, standards to ensure that it is a PFA-free product.
And
That
lead-free.
Yeah, okay, and lead-free.
2024, we're still talking about lead. Still having to- still
Well,
having to
Really?
make sure,
it's a
right?
big
So-
world now
Was that
with
lead abatement today?
lots
Yeah.
of roadways.
But couldn't we do that for people's, 50 square feet that's allowed now?
Okay, so what we
Can we
would,
do an educational campaign for their 50 square feet? I mean,
and then as far
But
as
still
further
oppose it.
regulation, and still oppose further regulation of it, but encourage or educate on what is currently allowed. What's currently allowed is a 50 square foot space. It's not allowed at all, but that wouldn't be
No,
permitted.
50 square foot doesn't require a permit,
Right.
Yeah, the only thing permitted right now is parks and athletic fields.
Okay, okay.
But we would propose that the 50 square feet would be something we would exempt from a permit. We would still ask that they comply with the regulations, that it be PFA-free, lead-free, things like that, but they wouldn't have a laundry list of installation requirements that they would have to get a permit for.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought it existed now.
No.
Okay, okay.
So I understand, like hypothetically, not everybody would do it, but just to play devil's advocate, you know, you have one neighbor that has it, what if everyone had it? Do we want 100% of Clearwater to be artificial turf? Because the way in which I see the regulations now, that's a possibility. There's no regulation around how much turf.
Maybe you can limit the number of permits that get issued each year, or square footage or something.
So that was something you mentioned in it, was limiting the square footage of it?
The percentage.
Or it's a percentage, right? Yeah, not limiting square footage, but limiting the percentage of.
Not a percentage of the turf. We have the requirement of the 25% in the front yard. That does
Okay.
not get into the side yard or the rear yard. We haven't put a cap on the square footage that you could put in a yard. Size of yards are going to vary. So we did not go down the road of creating that.
So it could be the entire side
Because there's
and
some
backyard.
regulations.
But you
Like
have that
600 square
impervious
foot.
to pervious ratio that impacts, right?
If it's put in correctly and it's considered pervious, then they could cover good portions of their yard with it.
So like 75% of their property, so 25% of their front yard, 100% of their side yards and backyard, is that?
Well, 25% of the front yard has to be a living landscaped area.
Okay, so.
So it could be 75% of the
75%.
front.
But you also have to keep in mind, they're gonna have a driveway, they're gonna have their house, they're gonna have a shed in the backyard. So it's areas that are left over that aren't covered with those areas that they could possibly, and underneath trees, we're gonna have concerns as well that it won't be going there. So there are limitations.
So it's not 75% of their yard, it's 75% of their
It's-
property can be impervious. So if their house takes up half their property, then they have,
25% of the entire property.
No, 25% of the front yard. We wanna make sure what's visible from the right of way is where we're getting a bulk of the landscaping.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Does that help? Okay.
I mean, she's doing all this work.
Yeah.
It's already a foregone conclusion that it's going through, isn't it?
No, not at all.
No, not necessarily. And like I said, in the past. when-
Staff went through this in 2011.
In 2011
Put all
when
these
staff-
hours into it.
Yeah, and then when it went
was
to council.
decided against it.
Yeah, the council had been given the option to just allow the one non-conforming use. In 2011, it was spurred because there was one homeowner who installed about a 600 square foot space in their front yard. And that led to code enforcement violation. And then there was a pushback of, well, the code doesn't specifically say you can't do this. It doesn't say you can either. It's lifelike or living. And so the idea was that this looks like it's living. And so staff was tasked by council to come up with ordinance then. And at that time, city council asked staff to come to the environmental advisory board twice, once when they first started, and once at the end of the process. And at that time, the concerns that the environmental advisory board had were using it out on the beach, which is where it's been proliferated, and the pushback there was, if you're gonna do it, we have to allow it citywide. You can't just allow it in some places of the city and not allow it in other places. So it has to be consistently, consistent. But ultimately, what happened was the mayor and city council decided that they will allow the one non-conforming use and close out. It was a code enforcement. She was being fined $100 a day and they said, we'll close that out. She wasn't fined, and we don't want to see this anywhere else. And then since then in the last 12 years, it's popped up in front yards and backyards, and from island estates to countryside. So the idea was that,
And code is.
and they were homeowners who were cited, and so when these homeowners were cited, they decided to get an attorney to represent them as a group, and so the attorney worked with the city rather than come into compliance. They said, how can we change the rules to allow this throughout the city? And so that's where we are now, is trying to change the rules to allow the non-conforming uses and also to open it up for further use, but use that would be regulated and put through a process. So, but again, like I said, like even then, there was the option to just not allow it at all, which is what they tried to do, but still put us at a position here now. So instead of one non-conforming use, I don't even know if code enforcement knows how many non-conforming uses there are now throughout
Yeah,
the city. So.
I don't know, I also too have a hard time telling people what they can do on property that they own. You know, it's like a double-edged sword for me.
Certainly,
You know?
certainly. That's not necessarily our place, but there is plenty of code and development that tells people what they can and can't do on their
Yeah.
property. City council last night approved changes to a noise ordinance to tell people that they can't use their blowers after 6 PM. So, there's plenty of rules that are put into place by the city to tell people what they can and can't do.
And the
Yeah,
question is,
that-
do we want to change the ordinance as it exists now?
Yeah, and do we want to
That's the
support, do we support changing, regulating it? I think is really what I think
Opening
is
it
what
up
we're
and
looking.
regulating it.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to take a vote, and then if you decide you do want to support it, then you can
Well, I don't know
outline-
what, I don't know what we'd be voting on right now, supporting
we
its
have a
use,
letter, we
supporting its
voted.
regulation, like, or
I'm just saying for time constraint,
Yeah.
it's like 6:30.
Yeah.
If we could talk about it for another hour, but
Yeah, no.
if you're just gonna
Yeah.
say you don't want to support it, then the conversation's over. If you do want to support it, then you can give Jared some guidelines on what he should put, in the letter of, okay, we support it, but we want X, Y, Z.
Because we have a letter, and we have a letter already that we voted once on this. Now, but we didn't hear the presentations.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily vote, we never made a motion on this specific wording
Okay.
or anything.
All right.
I just drafted something preliminarily based on our previous conversations and, some of the presentations that I had gone to. I thought it would be helpful for, furthering some discussion as part of the overall presentation. I agree, I think Cassie's right, we do need to try to, again, figure out what direction we're trying to go into. Is it to regulate and allow it, to encourage alternatives and not allow it at all, or to try to do something in the middle there? So that's what I'm looking for, is I guess a motion on what direction we want to go in, and then I can be tasked with writing a letter kind of distilling all of our.
Can we poll and see what we think? I mean,
That's what we've been
That's what we're
doing.
doing.
Yeah.
no, I mean, just with us,
I have one real quick question, actually, for Jamie. I know you guys are still working on the language. When can we expect final language that's going to be presented to City Council?
We'll go to Community Development Board first.
Okay.
And so it'll be, I think my final draft is due October 8th to go printing for them, so I got a couple of weeks.
And that meeting's October 15th.
Yes.
And then they'll take the wording and they'll have to make a recommendation
Yes.
on that, and then their recommendation would then go to City Council.
Yes.
Okay.
So my thought process is that there has to be some limitations to its use, or you're gonna cause a ripple effect that no one's thinking about right now, which is the environment itself. There's obviously environmental benefits. It's also trade-offs, as Chris already alluded to. And if that's not taken into consideration, and there's no limitation on its use besides, it could be in 75% of your front lawn. I think that's,
Like limiting square footage straight out, like 600 square feet or something being an average.
You realize that's like a 5x7 piece of rock, right?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm not saying 600 square feet's the answer.
Well,
I mean, even if it's
somebody's done that,
25% of your
and-
property, which, that's usually a decent size. But to be allowed to do 100% of your property, 100%, and 100% of people allowed to do 100% of their property, I think that's short-sighted, just to be honest.
It sounded like there are some limitations, at least for the front yard. The backyard, it sounds like there's less limitations there, where it's not typically seen by everyone. But, that goes to, again, if you allow it, you allow it, and if you don't, then you don't. That's, because, you know, once you kind of let the horse out, like I said, there's people that have it up to the trees that, you know, already have done that. You know, putting in a regulation to, you know, say you can't have it this, you know, within 10 feet of a tree or whatever, will again limit some of it, you know, some of it out in the yard. But then that's a question of, I guess, aesthetics, and I don't know that we want to try to regulate that, as you know, even this does try to regulate aesthetics to a certain extent, but yeah, it seems kind of like if we allow it, then we should just, you know, we're going to allow it, and if we don't, then we should pull it back, because you know, if it's there, it's there. You know, that's if it's 25% less, is that really, you know, on that 1 yard? What is that difference? And I think it's negligible, because if you're allowing it, it's out there, and just allow it or don't.
My feeling is that if we open it up and allow it, we're going backwards in terms of, I mean, a built-out environment that we have in Pinellas County for wildlife habitat. We've, you know, destroyed 70% of wildlife habitat at least, just in having developed the land as we have. So it just seems this would be going backwards on that from an environmental, from an
So like, to be
ecological
fair,
standpoint.
we allow pools, we allow pavers, we allow concrete, right? That essentially does the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we limit that. We don't let people just put concrete all over their entire backyard and front yard,
Right.
right? Obviously, I understand turf drains better than concrete. I'm not trying to get into that argument, but you see how we could allow it and limit its use at the same time so that it doesn't get out of control, to cause too much negative effects.
Are you recommending, or trying to like an idea? So we have, you know, right now we're looking at front yards can be 75% turf with 25% landscaped area. And right now, I believe the backyard could be 100% turf. Or you think we should do like a 75-25 in the backyard as well to keep some of that more there as well? Would that be an compromise you'd be considering there? Or are you thinking more in general that we're just kind of, it's just too much?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we need to come up with the specific guidelines today, right here, right now, but I think we should be advocating for the limitation of its use in some regard, and I think there should be some thought around that.
Okay.
Because right now, there's no thought around that except for the fact that, 25% of the front yard has to be, Florida plant life, which means that everything else is fair game.
My thoughts from an environmental standpoint is that, there are some benefits, but not enough to consider it an environmental product. We're an environmental advisory board. I think as an environmental product, there's some environmental benefits to it, but it's not, but there's better alternatives out there than doing that. And as an environmental board, I think that's what we should be tasked with, is promoting what the alternatives would be that would be better than using this.
Should be Florida
The
friendly
regulations, that's community development board, that's a different kind of, purview. And I think that's some of what we're getting kind of bogged down in, is looking at some of those aspects of it. And really, we're an environmental board, we're an environmental advisory board looking at, and I think the issues that we brought up in terms of amount of it certainly makes sense, but overall, just is it an environmental product? There's environmental benefits to it, and there are some positive aspects, but putting in Florida-friendly landscaping is a better alternative. Is it for everyone? No, and that's where I think, who, like Kelly says, who are we to say what people can and can't do, right? But as a board, I think we should be promoting the alternatives that are out there. And there are communities like Pinellas County that promote Florida-friendly landscaping and pay homeowners to put in plants that they don't have a lot of maintenance for, and then attract that biodiversity, pollinators and things like that. So I would think as an environmental board the route we would want to go is to not support further use of the product and to encourage alternatives to its use, like Florida-friendly practices. But those are my thoughts just from the mindset of what our board is supposed to be tasked with, environmental environmental impacts for the city. Certainly allowing it and trying to regulate it looks at a portion of what the environmental impacts are for the city, but I think if we're looking at it holistically, I don't know that there's enough environmental benefits to say that this is an environmental product that we would be 100% behind. Like I said, there's benefits, certainly water use and reducing
Emissions
the emissions from
Lawnmowers.
Yeah, but quantifying that versus the other aspects to it, I don't know. Is it equally balanced or it doesn't. To me, it doesn't seem like it is an equal balance in environment, so.
Well, could we possibly, like, not before it, but what if we delineated like what we viewed as the pros and cons and that we would encourage these other things? However, if the city is moving forward, we would recommend that the city look at these things and do these things so that we can, do our best to mitigate any downside.
Yeah, perfect. Can we make that a motion?
And those things would be like an educational program,
Yeah.
educating the public and limiting and further limiting use. Would it be
Further
more
limiting use of.
of turf grass?
Well, and
Well,
the
that-
type of
Or
turf
fit
grass.
artificial
I like
turf.
that idea.
You know what I mean? And the type, right? We want one that's, like she said, that
Well,
the
that's already in
standard.
there, but
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
it's you mean like the STC the standard for
For the
installer?
installers, for, the type of material, just to be a very much consumer advocate type of information.
Oh, you're talking about the educational part?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the two things I've heard is that, further limiting the use of it somehow, which, I'm fine too with a patch here and a patch there, for like accents or whatever. But the idea of artificial turfing your entire lawn and then your neighbor doing the same and then your neighbor doing the same, I just.
Yeah, imagine how
I'm
how
imagining-
Greenbrier was many, many years ago, and it was every single property in the Greenbrier subdivision had those pebble lots, and they had the asphalt beneath that and pebbles on top, and that's sort of where the beginning of regulating front yards came from, was because that community and the, but
But I don't know if
Maybe
we can
should get
agree
into
on all
color of
that.
houses too for Florida.
yeah, certainly. But the idea there speaks to what Michael said. That's house after house, and they're all stone pebble yards in the front, or at a time they were, until over time different homeowners changed that out. But that's something that if this is regulated to allow it, that's what you have to assume, is that your neighbor gets it, now your next neighbor's gonna get it, and so forth down the line. They're not, and not necessarily that's gonna be the case, but
Yeah.
if it's allowed, it will be allowed throughout the city, so everyone could do it. Not everyone is going to do it, but with that as you have to understand that could be a threshold, that, if there's buy-in, there might be at some point the minority of people having natural grass lawns, and everybody has artificial turf.
Well, artificial turf's probably easier to take care of, so.
All right, so I guess what I would be looking for then, it sounds like, is a motion for us to not support the use of artificial turf and encourage alternative uses, but
Encourage Florida-friendly.
right, but if we are going to regulate it, to ensure that it meets these other additional environmental
Right.
concerns and standards. Okay, so that's, so
That's
is that
my
the?
motion.
Okay, so I would be looking for a second. Were you able to get that? Okay, okay.
So to be clear, we should just revise this letter.
That's what we're working on. That's
Yeah,
what
we're
this
gonna
motion is
scrap
gonna
this
lead to.
letter.
Yeah,
We're
that's
gonna
how we're
scrap
gonna
the letter and
revise it,
start
is
over.
that, yeah, this draft will be redrafted based on our discussion and what our motion is. So we have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
Glenna seconds. All right, I am looking, I guess, all in favor, or, yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? I'll be in favor too. So motion carries unanimously. I'll put this letter together. I'll send it out to everyone. Cassie will be able to ship it back and forth. And then we'll get this hopefully to Jamie. And then city council before the November meeting. We won't have a meeting before city council meets on this, from what I could see from the timeline. So
November 21st, second hearing,
when's the first?
November.
The 7th? Yeah, our
November
meeting would
7th.
be,
No,
yeah,
we won't be till the week after that.
yeah. So,
But I think when we had the discussions with Rosemary, she basically said any letters that you all draft, you would bring to city council. So you would draft it, send it to me, I would distribute it, so sunshine laws, but then ultimately you would bring it to city council. But I don't, this might be different because you're actually saying you're gonna incorporate their comments.
We may be giving our
right, we need
report
to
around
get
that
it ahead
time.
of time to,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, you are welcome to write the letter and come and to city council on the 7th and present that.
certainly.
And my comments are not gonna be verbatim of everything that we discussed. It's gonna be a summary of what we've heard and a summary of the outcome, but by all means, it will say, okay, you're not really in favor of it, but if we're gonna go down this road, these are the things I'd like to see.
Right, okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that if you're putting together a staff report, that we can make sure it's included in time for whatever the next thing. If it's CDB, then that would be needed by, what, October 5th for the 15th meeting?
Yep, basically.
And to be clear, you are going down this road because city council asked you to go down this road.
Yes.
Yes.
Just wanted to make that.
Right.
Yeah.
Meaning for council, if they want to go down the road of approving this, if they want to take the next steps, this is what you would recommend that they include.
Okay, excellent, thank you very much. All right, so we're good on that, and I will make sure the timeline works. I'll have the letter to Cassie soon, so that we can make sure that it's put together and sent back to Jamie, hopefully in time for the CDB, so that whatever, you can just, so you have it, so it's just there. All right, great. Okay, so then, I think we're done with that item. We'll move on to get to the end of the meeting here. Old business items. The only thing from old business, I'm gonna go through this really quickly, is, and it was briefly mentioned by Cassie, we wrote a handful of letters, and I wanted to ask you, Cassie, it sounds, I don't think you didn't submit them, those letters. Okay, so, but everybody else looked at the letters that we put together. And I know that there was a concern, thank you very much. I know that there was a concern about the phosphogypsum. I know that when we had that discussion in the past, that some of it was that we were being proactive about that it wasn't an imminent thing. It was just something that had come up, and I think that as a board, we wanted to be proactive about it. And at that discussion in the past, we said that it may not even come to fruition, but that we wanted to, and maybe it is, again, another item that's a bit, premature because it's not out, as a product in use. But I felt that, and that's why I shared that, was that it's something that at least we can take a stance on. However council wants to perceive it is up to them, but I thought that it was something that, we can at least do, and say that it's something that we didn't want in our community. And is that still okay that we submit that? I just wanted to have that brief discussion.
I would actually like to delay it for one more meeting.
Okay.
'Cause I think there were some points made there that were, could just be revised.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to submit them through Cassie and then.
Yeah, because we had set, did you get an email to add in comments to it?
I did, and
Okay.
I didn't get as many comments on it as I would have liked.
I'm just thinking if the approach is going to be for you all to take it to city council, you won't be able to do that currently because it won't be on the agenda. So there is no citizens to be heard on items not on the agenda.
So that's another thing
So
that.
you might want to wait till
When's our presentation to council? Because
For
they
this-
only have their next meeting, they only have one meeting in October.
Yeah.
And then their next meeting's not November. So we really need to get our presentation and plan. That was another thing I was gonna ask you about is, do we know when that is? We had it, last year, I think we had it in September. We had it early in the year, because most boards have them later in the year, and we didn't want to get bogged down with the other boards and kind of just disappeared in the revelry of board presentations. So,
Revelry.
but I can submit the letters if you have some concerns that we can just add in there, and if it overall is okay, and we can just fix those things up, send it back to you to make sure for review that it's okay, and then we can submit it. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
It's not a problem. I can submit these to Rosemary, who will then push them to the council to make sure they all see them, and they can get those before we go to city council, and then we can read them out at council meeting or whatever, during the presentation, whenever that presentation may be. I don't know if you have an idea of when.
No, I'm looking now. I don't see it from when we did it last. I mean, I remember doing it. I just can't remember when it was.
Yeah, I know. I'd have to look and
I
see
think it was
when I
before.
It
wrote
was
the
in
presentation and see what the
November
date
last
was, and I'd say, oh yeah, it was around that time. So.
My thought was that since it's not like, we're being proactive about it, we got a little bit of time, to be
Oh,
honest. So-
certainly, I certainly understand that, yeah, and that's no problem at all. If it were just a couple of small things that we can fix. If not,
Well,
then we can push that one off, but the other two letters are okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, great. Then I'll push those through, and we'll get those off of our plate, and then whenever we have our presentation, I can revisit those with council and bring those up as items and other things. The only other thing I have, let me see, I want to make sure, because I wrote down my own business stuff here, I thought I did. The other thing that was mentioned was the vulnerability assessment. It's been concluded, so I want to make sure, if you guys didn't know that, and anybody watching, that the vulnerability assessment has been concluded. Please take a look. It's on the website. And then also Stevenson Creek, Marshall Street plant. There was a lot of stuff pushed out. The city, stuff pushed out by the plants, but information the city has put out about what they've been doing and what happened, and they've been updating the website on that. So I don't know if you guys have checked out any of that. Wanted to bring that up for us as a board and the viewing public, and that was kind of old business because we've had some Stevenson Creek presentations. But outside of that, those were the only old business items that I had, and asking about when our presentation to council would be. So I guess, will you be able to just send us an email to let us know when we get that together? And I guess if our next meeting's November something, we might not be able to have our presentation till like December, because typically we discuss what we want to present to council. It's usually what we did, and we had a slow start, but I think we've kind of sped up and have a lot to share with council of what we've been able to accomplish this year. But usually we have a brief discussion about that, and then, so maybe we'll just plan to have that brief discussion at our November meeting and
Yeah.
plan for whatever the next council meeting would be after that November meeting. That'll maybe preliminarily be when we try to do our presentation to council. Okay, great, all right. Our next item, director's report. Cassie, you're still here and with us. Thank you.
I am. So a couple of things I wanted to mention. One was the vulnerability assessment. So we did do the final public presentation at City Council. So if you didn't have a chance, it is if you just go to myclearwater.com/vulnerability. It'll bring you to our main page. And we are working on getting, currently the older presentation that we brought to City Council a couple months ago is there, but we're gonna get the one we just did uploaded. But that's gonna be the home for anything vulnerability assessment related. So ultimately, that's where the final report will be published and anything else going forward. So if you haven't checked out that website, I would recommend going to that. And then I have a small win that we have officially ordered the city's first 2 EV vehicles.
Oh, congratulations.
That is
That's great.
in the works, likely 6 to 8 months lead time. And we will wrap those with the promotional, City of Clearwater, all electric, some sort of design. And that's through a grant, so that's at no cost to the city. And we will potentially be purchasing maybe a couple of more with those same grant fundings. We're still working out how to spend the entire grant.
What are those vehicles
It's actually
for?
an allocation, I should say.
Are they public works vehicles? or
They're
like-
gonna be 2 public works vehicles, shared vehicles, pooled vehicles. So, which will be great for everybody that's going out to any sort of events or anything. Obviously, Melody and I will try to take it if we go anywhere. But we have several pooled vehicles that public works employees, when they're going out, they take. So we'll try to use them to their maximum potential. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the DOE, that 1.9 solar grant that is on hold, I think we mentioned that at the last meeting. So that is on hold currently, but we have the city, both city council, both solar projects have been taken to city council with their guaranteed maximum price. So those are now executed, and so they'll be breaking ground. So we are still hoping to get those done by the end of the year. They should be actually pretty swift once they get going.
So they're not a part of the 1.9 million?
No, they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then the 1.9 was put on hold. So
Yeah.
we had 2 million set aside in ARPA-related funds.
Oh.
That went towards the solar.
So the 1.9 million is not ARPA funds, it's,
There's 2 different pots of money.
so there's still ARPA funds. ARPA funds
The
is
ARPA
not.
funds is what's being used for the first 4 projects: the solid waste transfer station, the gas complex, general services, back 40, which are the warehouses, and Morningside Rec. So those are being the ARPA-related funds, because the ARPA funds were technically
So those are all going to go, well, 2 are going forward.
4 are going forward. They
4
are approved.
are approved.
Yes. So I actually have a little chart here that I can send you all, but just the location, the size, the contractor. So they're going ahead, full steam ahead.
Bravo.
And then if and when that waiver does come out, we will now have to go back and look at that $1.9 million, because that is a 50% match. So it's $849,000 from the DOE, $849,000 that the city has to match. So the city was going to use the ARPA funds to match, but now because the timeline's not working, the city went ahead with the ARPA funds with these other projects. So we'll have to reevaluate if we want to come up with another $849,000 for the match.
Okay.
However, we will be eligible for the 30% back from the elective pay. So essentially, we'd get 50% off because it would be DOE money, and then we'd get another 30 to 40% back from the total cost of the project. So it would be a bargain if the city decided to pursue it. So it's potential for, because we had several buildings that would, were on our solar feasibility study, so we would be looking at potentially City Hall, as mentioned.
Yeah.
Long Center Rec, because they are putting a new roof on that during the renovation, or at least that's what they keep changing their mind, but believe they're going to. And then we had Countryside Library was also a good candidate, as well as North Greenwood Rec Library. So we do have some good candidates for that 1.9, and so hopefully we're gonna have solar everywhere.
That's great.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be really awesome. So that was all the main ones I was gonna mention. And then I was just looking at our EAB topic request document that I have here. So I know we had originally said that we were gonna have the landscaping at this meeting. However, I reached out to Matt Anderson to double confirm, and he went ahead and said, this has been kind of exhaustively presented, and so we went ahead and canceled that, and just directed you all to watch the city council presentation, because it would have been the same thing, and thankfully we didn't do it. We'd be 9 o'clock right now.
Yeah, another late one.
So we've kind of scratched that one, so we've just knocked out artificial turf and city hall update. So a couple that we had next on the list was inviting the lady that came and, she spoke on Citizens to be Heard.
Chris?
Was that her name? The Stevenson
Seawall?
Creek?
Yeah, about the seawall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have her name on here?
Mikulak.
Alexandra.
Oh, Alex Nixon.
Oh,
Alexandra.
Alexandra
Stevenson Creek.
Stevenson's
Yeah,
Creek.
Stevenson
Oh, okay,
Creek. So I'm
okay.
sorry, not today. She
Okay.
came
At our last
last
meeting,
meeting.
yeah, certainly, okay.
Gave a quick little under the 3-minute presentation.
Yeah, oh.
And we have the option of inviting her back to do an actual presentation.
Yes.
So that's one option. We have the Stevenson Creek feasibility study that Marine and Aviation mentioned when they were also here last time. They said that should be wrapping up in September, October, so that may be good for November. And then we also have the solar projects. I could give like a more in-depth report if you'd like, because we should have some progress, although we may want to wait a little bit longer, because
Okay.
I don't know we'll have, I don't know that I'll have much more to say than what I just said. Maybe we wait till January, so maybe they're done and we have some, great info to go with them, maybe
Yeah.
even some production, how they're doing. So I would say maybe push that a little bit. And then green print update, again, that was kind of depending on the progress. There's not
Not a lot.
a lot of progress,
Okay.
unfortunately. We are looking to, really get that kick-started into 2025. And then some of the others were the Cooper's Bayou, that Sarah's still waiting on a budget to develop the final design. We had mentioned looking at some photovoltaics, possibly someone in Orlando did it, we could potentially get a presentation. And then Lake Bellevue. That was just a topic we were looking.
Water management plan for
Water
Lake
management
Bellevue.
plan,
That was
yeah.
something from Sarah too. I don't know if she's been on that or.
Well,
if
Sarah
it's-
said that it's part of Stevenson Creek and will be included in the Stevenson Creek Watershed Management
Perfect.
Plan that's gonna be funded
Okay.
next year. So
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think she has anything further, but she did mention that Ed Thieb, I guess, is an expert on Lake Bellevue, and
Okay.
perhaps he could give he's not a staff member.
Okay.
I believe he's a community member that's
Okay.
very
Yeah.
knowledgeable. So those are a couple. Well, actually, that's the whole list.
Okay,
So I don't
yeah,
know
that's-
which, last meeting, I only put 3, and we went really long. I only
Yeah, I
put
know. I
2
thought we were
today
gonna
at
really,
7
I thought we,
o'clock.
I thought we'd be up
I
at
didn't think we were
one
gonna keep you here so
per
long,
meeting.
Nicole. I'm sorry.
I've been at work for 12 hours, so
Yeah,
what's the plan?
well, if we're gonna have a Stevenson Creek feasibility presentation.
do it all, like-
Well, have, Alex is gonna present about Stevenson Creek too. I would think have them at the same
Same
time.
time.
Yeah.
Because any
Okay.
questions or overlap might be able
Yeah.
to be addressed.
So should I check with Marine and Aviation and see if November is good for them?
Yeah,
And if they say
yeah.
yes, then we can do
Yeah.
that and Alex
Yeah,
together.
yeah, if we
If they
can-
say, oh, because, things don't always happen when they say they're gonna happen.
Certainly.
So if they say, oh, it's not gonna wrap up till end of November,
Not a
then,
problem.
what are we thinking for November then?
Then what do we
We
want?
just go down the list. What's next on there?
Well, next was the solar.
Will there be movement that there could be some
Should know.
presentation to?
Yeah, I'm not
You won't
sure.
know.
I
Okay.
would say maybe.
Okay. Maybe. All right.
And then what's after that?
Cooper's Bayou, but again, she said that's not
Yeah, that's
till
still, yeah,
next
timeline
year.
sensitive, yeah.
The photovoltaics in Lake Bellevue.
Well, for our November meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
November.
it possible to just check back in a month or so and
Yeah.
see?
Yeah, just let us, yeah, if you can, yeah, I think.
And then
we-
the
You mentioned-
final thing that I wanted to mention was, we switched this meeting from quarterly to bi-monthly
Yes.
last year. And we said we were gonna do that on a trial basis for
Yes.
this year. So November would be our last meeting. So I think we need to decide if we want to, and I'm not sure, and Nicole, maybe you can chime in. I don't know if it's really a decision you all make, or if it's a decision that city staff is gonna make.
Yeah, I think city manager might oversee that. That's, I think, how we were able to push or extend it before it was through it was through our presentation process with the city council and city manager, and we had asked for extending it on a trial basis, so I think we can discuss that at our next meeting in terms of our presentation as part of that presentation to council, and see if we collectively agree that we should continue to meet 6 times a year or go back to quarterly. would just say preliminarily now, we should probably keep it the way it is. We are filling out the time more so, and we need to figure out still how to throttle that back, but I think 6 times a year, we've been getting great engagement from residents, and I think it gives a little bit more consistency of, for people to come here and know that, expect that there will be a meeting and not
And
wait
stuff
another
doesn't happen that
3
we
months
can't
or so.
address.
Yeah, so, but we'll save that discussion for our next time and as part of our presentation. Thanks. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, great. We'll move on then to board members to be heard. Anything? We've been here talking for a long time.
Yeah.
Anything from anyone?
Other than just saying thank you to everyone who's stuck around, I really appreciate everyone who's here, and appreciate the discussion from my fellow board members.
Yes, certainly. Michael?
I've just got a couple things.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Michael, any comment?
I feel very heard today, thank you.
Oh,
No, nothing left to say.
Lana?
I just have a couple comments. I just handed out some things on Amendment 2. I don't know if I could, I wanted to get here early to see if this was okay to talk about, but I mean, it's on the ballot. Can I talk about this? It's about, it is environmental, it's about the
You can talk
environment.
about it.
Yeah,
Briefly
it's
mention it.
protect wildlife and fish population amendment that's being proposed on the November ballot. And I just want to say, please do your research on this. It looks good from the surface, but it has a potential of threatening wildlife, science-based wildlife conservation management. And and this is a little handout. The environmental groups are fighting it. So just to educate, it's not very, I'm not hearing a lot of press on this or a lot of information on this amendment, but it would become the highest law of the land, and we just want to try to get the word out about that amendment. Also, because I think that's happening before we meet next, also, they're going to be, City Council is going to be having the lobbyists go, giving instructions to the lobbyists, and I don't know if we want input in that, but depending on what we have to say about phosphogemsin, I think that we want to ask our lobbyists to be keeping a very clear eye on what's happening at the state upcoming legislative session on that, and also there's concerns that net metering is going to come back up again. So for those 2,000 homes or so, businesses and homes, businesses, and our municipal buildings, we want to maintain net metering as it is. And so, that's, once again, these are two proactive stands on this, but there's a feeling that this is coming back. This year it did not. Last year it was big, and it made it all the way to the governor's desk to basically eliminate net metering by the power companies. So cost of electricity is going up. This is the last thing we need to do, is to hamstring people's opportunities for fair use of their electricity, of their solar-powered electricity. So anyway, those are just some ideas for the lobbyists. We haven't talked about that. Don't know when City Council is going to be giving their marching orders.
Yeah, I know, last year we did have a brief discussion about, and that's when you mentioned the fertilizer stuff, so maybe that's
Right.
something that at our next meeting we can certainly, and I know when we had that discussion about our wants for the lobbyists, that it was after council had already asked them, so they kind of added that stuff
That's why
in
I'm saying
later.
this now.
So,
They're
yeah.
saying, well, we already have a full agenda for our lobbyists. Well, maybe we need to mention this, sooner.
Okay. I guess we'll have to find out when the schedule is for when they do that discussion with the council. I don't know if it's gonna be in November, or if it's October, or if it's not.
Later
Yeah.
or earlier
Right, yeah.
next year,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Really?
so we could
Okay.
be right in time to make sure that our comments
Okay,
are
good.
I don't think
added
any
to them.
lobbying happens until the election's over.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so we should be,
Oh, yeah,
we should be
good
in
point.
place to do that,
That's a
yeah.
good point, yeah.
So
Okay.
maybe just put it on the agenda next?
Yeah, yeah, just, yeah, as a discussion item, some.
Yeah, just we want input on the lobby, for the lobbyist and their,
Or maybe if there's a list of what the council's already asked the lobbyists for, we can see what, because that's what I think we had in the last time, was that there was a list of wants by council, and we tried to line up what environmental issues were on there, and then also try to add in, because there were some that they didn't really. Yeah, legislative priority,
Right.
certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll certainly try to figure that out,
I
right?
wasn't real, Micah did it last year,
Yeah,
so I don't
yeah,
really remember
yeah.
how the timing of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember looking at it, but
I would imagine February, March.
Yeah, well, it'll be a bit before then, yeah.
well, I don't know if we can have any input into that or not, but I would like to try and
Okay,
to,
we can try.
to get
We can
in
try
on
that.
it before.
We will try. Yeah.
Okay,
So we can possibly have input at our next, or have discussion at our next meeting in November, and that input can be possibly part of that discussion, or we can put it off to our January meeting if that better fits. It might,
I don't know,
it might be too close then.
we were
but,
too late last time,
Yeah,
so
so
let's
November, yeah. Okay,
try
anything
to
else?
do it
Gordon?
earlier. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to be extremely brief here. I really want to get us out of here. The city posted on social media today a large problem with recycling. They had to give the recycling company, the contractor, couldn't recycle 30 tons of recyclable material because of waste. It was just too junky, too much trash. We've had this. We've asked. This board's asked in the past. If we can get the stickers back on the cans, and there were a couple of comments on this social media post that the city put out asking the exact same thing. I know when we brought this up in the past, it was because it wasn't happening yet because there was issues with the contractor and what they would take and what they wouldn't take. But I think that there's, what is it? The fast 5 or 4 or 3 things that whatever we can really slim it down to and put on a sticker and go out to all the houses and slap that on. I think that education campaign is going to really be helpful. We don't have anything else helping people know what to do except we posting some stuff on the website, and we can ask what the traffic is to the website, but it's not going to be what it would be by having stickers on every single person's.
so I handled this in my last municipality.
Excellent.
We had recycling as opt-in, and I think we only had, our size was around 80,000, and I think we had maybe 30,000, no, I think 10,000 households or so that opted into the recycling. We looked at the stickers, because those stickers need to be very high quality because they're outside. The stickers are expensive. Like it was tens of thousands of dollars.
For here, to do that? Or
This
for
was
just the
there.
10,000?
I mean, I
Okay.
think it was maybe 10,000 there, and we're talking a
Everybody.
much less
Yeah.
number than here.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there that because I saw the Facebook today and I saw the comments, we need stickers, we need stickers. I don't think people realize how expensive stickers are, and then the process of getting new stickers, who's gonna put the stickers? Are we gonna send staff out to put the new stickers? Are we gonna distribute them to people and then they can put stickers? And one other thing is, we found that the sticker on your trash can, out your recycling bin, it's too late at that point. You need the sticker, whatever you put your recycling in your kitchen or your garage, or what I would do is I would put it on the fridge.
Yeah.
That's where you need it.
I was just thinking fridge
So
magnet.
if you,
Yeah.
once you
Fridge
brought your
magnet.
bin or your
Great, let's do
bag
those.
to your curbside, you're not gonna go through and say, oh, I'm not supposed to put a styrofoam cup in here, let me pull it out. Like, that's too late.
Yeah.
So I would argue that
Oh, good point.
stickering the cans is not as practical or effective as many people might think it sounds. So I would say we could do other education. I did a lot of recycling education. It's very hard to get people to understand, and it's not necessarily their fault. Recycling is different in every community. Recycling markets change.
And it changes.
You
Yeah.
know, that's the thing, people don't realize, it's a market.
Yeah.
Maybe 5s were accepted 3 years ago, but nobody's buying 5s anymore, so they don't want them anymore.
Yeah, we can't recycle glass anymore, and that used to be very heavily
Recycled glass
recycled.
has almost no market value.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, anybody's fault, it's just the way the system works.
Certainly. Our cans, when they first came out to everyone, when we did when we switched over to single stream, whatever,
Yeah.
and all that, the cans had stickers on them. And,
Yeah.
and over time they faded.
Right.
When new homeowners come in, they get a new can, or sometimes now they're older cans that are faded already. But there was a sticker on there at one point, and I understand that's it's not going to solve the problem. But we need to have some education efforts, and not having any at all is not helpful, and we can see what the result is, not
Maybe
being able to recycle the
Can we
product.
put that on the agenda? Because I know,
Yeah, exactly.
I could like stick on my fridge.
Yeah.
we could do it. We actually, refrigerator magnets do a pretty good job. My HOA.
Yeah, we did magnets.
The police did it for like lock your car and like, because we were having thefts from unlocked cars. And, I mean, we've literally almost eliminated that in my neighborhood because every new house, actually, we put the Clearwater Police developed stickers, refrigerator magnets, and they gave 1,000 of them to my neighborhood, Morningside Meadows, and we put it in a mailer, that we deliver to the home once a year. We covered everyone in our neighborhood has a refrigerator magnet about being broken into, about locking your doors in your car and your garage. And it's actually been effective.
All right. So maybe we can figure out magnets or whatever education component, but we need to do something, and that's all I wanted to bring up for my comment was that we should.
We do have a solid waste and recycling specialist.
Yes.
Jonathan, he's new, so it used to be
Okay.
Savannah, which we used to work with Savannah.
Yeah.
So I can reach out to Jonathan and see, because he is new, I don't know,
Yeah, maybe it's
if
something he's
gotten
working
to
on, or
that
there's some
yet.
other options or something,
Yeah,
yeah,
see if
whatever
we can-
we can do, and maybe it is sending out a magnet in the utility bill, and just putting it in there with the sunshine lines or something, and if people wanna put it on there, they can, but we can ensure that it's pushed out to everyone in
That's
that
the other
way,
thing, the
so.
stickers on the cans are big.
Yes.
And then shipping, and then mailing them is
Yeah,
more expensive.
certainly.
Well, the
certainly.
refrigerator
Well, and that
magnet's
can-
gonna be fair size too, so,
But, yeah,
you go to the
stickers.
CNC.
Yeah, the stickers can just, it would be cumbersome to have somebody go out, but we, and slap them on, but I'm not saying that's what we need to do, I just wanted to bring up that something should be done, and, because right now, and it was brought up, on social media, and I wanted to just echo those comments for my board comment. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up was that it's still sea turtle nesting season, but at the end of this month, we're gonna have the offshore national boat races, and so there's gonna be 200-mile-per-hour boats going just off the coast. We've asked in the past for a presentation about sea turtle nesting season and the impacts of a boat race during that. That didn't happen because the day that the presenter was supposed to come, the Clearwater Marine Aquarium said we can't come, and they didn't come. But I just wanted to bring up that the boat races still happen, and they are still happening during sea turtle nesting season.
And
so-
we've gotten no traction
Yeah.
for making that change.
But anyway, those are my comments. I appreciate everyone for watching and everyone for our discussion. We're going to adjourn the meeting now. Thanks.